Okay, stream. Just let me know if you can hear me, okay? The video is not supposed to be up. I'm just testing my audio levels before I start, but if you let me know in the chat when you can hear me and if the levels are okay, or if it's too quiet, too loud, there won't be any music, so it'll just be this voice. And there's also a bit of a delay, so let me know. In fact, I just heard myself, so I hope everything's working. Good. Good work. Okay, yeah, you guys can hear me. Sounds good. Perfect. Ooh. So, just looking at the chat so far, a few familiar faces. Elaine, hopefully I've said your name correctly. We've chatted quite a bit. For context, Elaine is a member, so we've chatted a bit in the community section for members. But let me know if I've said your name correctly. I have to get that right at some point. Good questions coming in so far. When to use SQL, sum, case, and statements, and when to use Tableau calculations. A good question. You know, where should you be doing your calculations, in the workbook or back in the database where other people can see them? That's a great question. What else? Having to create the missing key. Yeah, creating the missing key if you're bringing data sets together. So you might need to do a join calculation. Radar, donut, and heat maps. Yeah, we'll be covering charts today. The missing key is a bit of a difficult one. I sort of don't know whether that is a basic or intermediate, or we'll see. We'll definitely answer the question. So keep me honest if I don't answer that, and we can get back to it. We've got a few people from all over the world. So we've had Paris, France. We've got San Diego. We've got Cyril from Arkansas, and Oluwase from DC. I hope I've said your name correctly. I've probably murdered it. Apologies. Let me know in the comments if I was even close. I really appreciate that. So let me switch over to the camera feed. So for everyone's benefit, it's probably worth me sort of just highlighting what's going on today. The reason I've started doing live streams is mainly because it's just so hard to get the right amount of content out to people. So I thought instead of sort of waiting to do everything and get it all done perfectly, let's try out the live stream format and let's make headway with the stuff that people are passionate about at the beginning of the year. So this week we're doing a Tableau desktop crash course. And then next week we'll probably end up trying to do something different, maybe Tableau prep. We'll do a crash course for that. And then we'll do Tableau Server and Online the week after that. So we're going to try and do these weekly. And then once we've done the crash courses, those are supposed to be, very basic introduction from absolutely no experience to some experience. We'll then start to cover the more difficult challenges. But the upside of that is that it's informal, it's relaxed. Where it makes sense, I might chop up sections of the video and do them properly on the channel. So you might see some of these again as videos, but those tend to be better for things like Google search, where someone's not going to sit and watch a 5-hour video just to get the section they want. So if you see these again somewhere, don't be surprised, but that's pretty much sort of what I'm going for. Okay. So we have about 20 people signed up already, just starting. We'll give it a couple more minutes and we'll get really sort of properly started in earnest as well. So if you're still joining and you want to ask some questions, go ahead and do that in the comments and then we'll get started very soon. If you're wondering why I keep looking to the left, it's because that's where my second screen is. So this is where the main screen is, that's where the camera is. And I keep looking to my left just to make sure the comments and everything are doing well. Okay, so we better let me switch over to this view. It's actually probably worth I think there is actually something really important to talk about just before we get started. You might not know this, but over the last week, Salesforce, the parent company of Tableau, announced layoffs that impacted all of Salesforce, but actually, in my opinion, they've heavily impacted Tableau. And so, I'm here today to show you how to use the software. But on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, you maybe will have seen a lot of the people who help build this product, looking for roles, looking for opportunities in the employment market today. And some of them just, looking for support as well. When people get laid off, it's not always necessarily that they need a job straight away. Sometimes people take the opportunity to have a break. Sometimes people just love to know that the work they've done has had a meaningful impact on people. And, that's what I definitely saw from a lot of the Tableau staff. I've been working with Tableau. How long have I been a Tableau sort of community member? I've been a Tableau community member for about 7 years, but I've worked with their, let's say, program, the community program, for about 3 years. And as an ambassador and as now a visionary, one of the opportunities you get is to work really closely with developers to help improve the product. And I can hand on heart say that they are extremely professional. They care so passionately about the product. They take things to levels of detail that you probably don't even appreciate when you open the software. You might think that there's such basic things missing from the product that people should people should have figured out. Formatting is a classic one that I normally quite commonly rail about. I always think that should be better. But the people who work on the product do know that. They do hear our messages. And it's actually, the mechanics within an organization that kind of stops some of that innovation coming through. And so in the last week, it's just really important to let them know that their work is appreciated. Let them know that their efforts, wherever they land, are going to always be appreciated by the community. I always think once you're a Tableau community member, you're always a Tableau community member. And in terms of us as users, how does this layoff impact us? Well, it doesn't impact us, immediately. Some of these things take a while to sort of materialize. If you work in product management, you'll know that roadmaps exist for a reason. Most of the features that you see today get planned months in advance, maybe years in advance. So we probably won't see any change today, tomorrow, next week. I'll still be here doing videos about Tableau, whatever, 24.1 or whatever it is. But I think we do have to hold a more critical eye on the vision and the leadership of Tableau as things start to change. And so it's only right to sort of, in many ways, show respect for the work that's come before the work that's coming ahead. And so, if you can do that, just go to LinkedIn, show anyone who works at Tableau love and support. Whether or not they've been laid off, they all need lots of support, because for those who are still there, they've lost valuable colleagues and leadership as well. So show them some love, let them know they're appreciated. And today we're hopefully going to be celebrating their work as much as we'll be learning a bit about Tableau. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to kind of go on much more about it. The world's a tough place, and we know these things happen. So let's just try and sort of take the positivity out of it. Right, today we are learning Tableau. Let's switch over to this view. So let me just check everything is working okay. We're learning Tableau. What is Tableau? If you haven't noticed, let's do some housekeeping first. On the left of the screen is literally my notes that I'm going to be working through. So if you're already keen and you've sort of been looking at the left-hand side, this is sort of the rough agenda for the crash course, and it's quite long. And my promise to you is that I will not leave this chair until this is done, okay? So we are going to get this all done. This is being recorded. That's the nature of YouTube. So don't worry too much about, grabbing notes, grabbing screenshots. You can come back to this later on. I might do some editing on the recording, but nonetheless, this will be up pretty much within 48 hours once the stream is done. The agenda is pretty straightforward. Because this is a crash course, there will be things that I'll touch on briefly, but I'll call them out. And I'll call them out for two reasons. Number one, I've been on YouTube a long, long time. So, if I just go to my videos, I guarantee you that most of the things I've done in the course today, there'll be a video about in my library. So for example, if you want to learn how to do calculations, you can just come on the channel and search for it. There's, if you just search, Tableau Tim in the topic, you'll pretty much find it. So whenever I call out something that I've done a video on already, just go to my channel and search for it. That will cover it in more depth. I often spend 5, maybe 20 minutes covering that specific detail topic. Where there isn't something, I'll cover it in detail here, of course, as well. So just be aware of that. The other thing is, I will stop maybe for a break, just for 5-10 minute break. Just let everyone sort of have an opportunity to grab a drink. And this is completely informal, so obviously it's not a Zoom call, so you can't put your hand up and talk to me, but you can flood the chat box as well. So be sure to do that, and be sure to let me know if you've got comments. I'll check it periodically between topics just to make sure I'm staying on track, but nonetheless, I'll try and cover all the comments as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Before we get started, I'll give anyone sort of an opportunity to ask any questions before we get started. That's always a good thing to do before any training. So let me just quickly check the chat. If you're hearing this now, ask the questions now while I go through and scan the previous comments. So we've got a few more people. Dallas, Pennsylvania. Elaine, the pronunciation was okay-ish. You have to put the phonetic spelling in the chat so I can figure it out. Steak Boy, the kids are doing great. The reason I'm doing this live stream at this time of day is because A, it's a weekend, which means I'm not at work. B, the kids are asleep, which is perfect. C, the dog is asleep, so I don't have to sort of go and entertain the dog or anything. And number 4, most important one, of course, I negotiated with my wife to be sat here for the next few hours. So everything is clear, everything is good. We're going to be able to do this and get through it. So we should be good to go. Okay. So someone's asked about versions. We're going to get stuck into that. It's a topic you'll see here. So if you're going to ask a question and you can see it coming up on the left hand side, just hold the question until that moment in time, and I'll make sure I check the questions periodically just to make sure we cover everything. Okay, so let's get started. So welcome to this crash course of Tableau. I'll quickly do a very brief introduction of myself. I don't think you guys need an introduction, but I'll do it anyway for the benefit of the recording, just literally 1 minute. My name is Tim. I'm an analytics consultant. I work at the Information Lab. The Information Lab is a Tableau partner that does a lot of great work helping customers understand and work with data. I also do a little bit of teaching at the Data School, which is owned by the Information Lab. It's essentially a program that helps train people up to go out and be great consultants using Tableau and Alteryx. I am also a LinkedIn instructor. So if you head over to my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I recently introduced this course called Everybody's Introduction to Tableau. If you actually go to my profile and find this post, I'll put it in the comments. You can find a link just underneath this blue area that says saved. And if you click on that link, you'll have access for free for 24 hours. So that's something to be aware of. I'll put it in the chat now just so you can see that. And then, very last thing is I'm a Tableau visionary. So I've been working with Tableau for 8 years now, a really, really long time. The first time I used it, I didn't even know I was using Tableau. That's why it's 8 and not 7. And yeah, I'm part of a very privileged community of people who help teach and share the values of Tableau, but also help spread the good stuff that Tableau can do, whether it's at work, whether it's for good causes, or whether it's just trying to get more people to be more data literate and work with Tableau itself. So that's pretty much a summary of what I do, and hopefully I'm going to be able to share some of that wisdom with you today. So let me go ahead and close these tabs as I no longer need them. Okay, so what is Tableau? Tableau is an analytics platform. It's essentially a tool that's used in businesses to help them work with large amounts of data and help teams and analytics teams build analytical workflows. Now, I'm pretty proud of if you go to Google and search what is Tableau, I'm pretty proud to essentially have a video that covers this topic in under 10 minutes. It's got over 500,000 views. And so what I don't want to do is labor that here in the live stream. But what I will do is I'll put a link to this in the comments in the chat as well. And this is definitely probably the best explainer of Tableau I've ever done. I'm due to do a new one. I don't know how I'm going to beat this one, but join the 500,000 people who've already watched this and who think it's a great introduction to Tableau. For the benefit of everyone in this stream, it's the simplest way to think of Tableau is in every business, you work with data, whether it's how well you're performing, what you're selling, what you want to do, goals or targets. As your business is transacting, doing whatever it needs to do, you're collecting data. And what Tableau offers is a platform to manage that data, store that data in some respects, and then share that data with people in the organization. It does that using a range of products, and each of the products has a different role in the entire platform. So if I go over to this tab over here, I won't go into each page. I just want to give you a rundown of the products. You'll see that the platform is actually made up of several products. Most people know of Tableau Desktop, but not many people actually go beyond Tableau Desktop, which is a real shame in my opinion, because the whole platform is super powerful. So today, we're just going to be covering Tableau Desktop, this option over here. There's another product called Tableau Server, and recently a new product called Tableau Cloud, which was previously called Tableau Online. Now, Tableau Server and Tableau Cloud, they're responsible for essentially playing the role of the platform. They're the platform that you connect to. They're where you share your work to. They're also the platforms that manage things like governance and the ability to share stuff within your organization. It's essentially a CMS for analytical content, whether it's a dashboard, data, security, data connections, all of that is managed inside of the Tableau platform. Of course, businesses have other tools as well, so Tableau plays really nicely with those tools, but in essence, Tableau Cloud and Tableau Server are where people go to mostly consume that information. The work that you build in Tableau Desktop gets published up to Tableau Server and Tableau Cloud. It's essentially like putting up a blog on a website. And once you've done that, other people can see it, and all the security and permissions are managed, which means your data stays safe, it stays governed, and in many cases, it allows you to also do things like monitor which data sources are being used and which ones aren't, so you can better optimize the way data works. Tableau Prep is a fairly new tool. It's a data preparation tool, very similar to another tool in the industry called Alteryx Analytics. That is another tool that's used to clean data. Now, when we're talking about cleaning data, most of you maybe do this in Excel. You might do it just manually by, changing the way data looks. Maybe you're pivoting rows in Excel. Maybe you're creating power pivots to reformat data. Tableau Prep lets you do that in a visual way. And again, for that product, I actually have another video that explains that really, really well. So again, I won't sort of Google that now, but if you go to Google and search what is Tableau Prep and you look at the first 3 video hits, my video there will explain that for you really, really, really well. The newest part of Tableau recently is something called CRM Analytics. This is essentially what used to be called Einstein Analytics that sat within the Einstein platform in Salesforce. In essence, before Salesforce acquired Tableau, Salesforce needed their own analytics platform, and that's kind of where CRM Analytics came from. So I won't delve too much into that today, but that's just some context. Tableau Public is actually pretty important for today because although I'll be using Tableau Desktop and I'll occasionally switch to Tableau Public is essentially the free version of Tableau Desktop. So everyone watching this video now doesn't need to pay for Tableau or even activate a Tableau Desktop trial just to try Tableau. You can actually start using this straight away from Tableau Public. And again, I'll show you this a little bit later on. Once we've gone through all the products, you have these items here at the bottom, which I won't go through in detail, but in essence, these are add-ons. There are additional capabilities that are added to Tableau to allow you to do different things. So data management helps you manage data better. Advanced management helps you run Tableau Cloud and Tableau Server in a more optimized way. Embedded analytics allows you to take your Tableau dashboard and put it inside of another application. An application in this case could be inside of your CRM. It could be a portal that you have inside of your organization for managing patients or managing people or managing whatever you manage. And in other cases, it could just be the ability to give someone the ability to build a dashboard using data from your system. So embedded analytics is a sort of abstract concept, but in essence, you're just taking the technology that Tableau have built and you're putting it inside of your own application or your own platform. And then they have a bunch of other integrations and stuff that I won't go through. But that is in a nutshell what Tableau is. It's an analytics platform. It's got quite a big, handful of tools now, and they all sort of work to this purpose of helping businesses better manage data. Now, I've explicitly been mentioning businesses because Tableau is an expensive product. It does something that's really important for businesses. And so if we just very briefly go to the pricing, it's always important to talk about pricing because licenses are linked to pricing and licenses control what you can do with Tableau. So if you're going to install Tableau Desktop on your machine, at work or wherever you're going to have it, if you're using Tableau Public, great, that's free. I'll come to the limitations in a second. But if you're using Tableau Desktop, you're going to need to understand where your specific organization has put you in terms of licensing. So if I go to the Tableau pricing, you'll see 3 terms that are commonly used for licensing. The first one is a Tableau creator, the second one is a Tableau explorer, and the last one is a Tableau viewer. Now, these are very sort of abstract terms, but I like to sort of break them down and simplify them. And so what I would say is a Tableau creator gets access to the full platform. If you're using Tableau desktop, you're using Tableau prep, you have the creator license. Now, back in the old day, this used to be called something completely different. They didn't have these names. And so you might still see a few people using Tableau with a license key specifically just for Tableau desktop or specifically for Tableau desktop and Tableau prep. But broadly speaking, if you're new to Tableau today, you're going to be either a creator, explorer, or a viewer. For the benefit of everyone else, an explorer and viewer are kind of the same. These two users essentially just access data on Tableau Cloud or Tableau Server. You can see here it says Tableau Cloud. I should start using my annotations. You can see here it says Tableau Cloud. And the reason it doesn't mention Tableau Server is because there's actually a second tab here that shows you the pricing for on-premise, which is Tableau Server. I won't go into the detail of the difference between on-premise and hosted by Tableau, but just know that Tableau Server hosted on-premise is a little bit cheaper because your organization takes on the management of basically managing the server. Tableau Cloud is just like Salesforce, is just like any other tool like Google where you log into a website and it's all managed for you. You don't have to worry about servers or systems. Everything sits in the cloud. And so there's an additional cost for the Explorer and Viewer license to be able to do that and not worry about setting everything up. The creator's license automatically works on Tableau Cloud and Tableau Server if they already have one. And as I mentioned before, you've got these add-ons here at the bottom, and these pretty much control additional capabilities, but that's a bit beyond sort of the basics for this course. So to use Tableau Desktop, you're going to need a creator license. Now, what if you just want to learn Tableau? What if you just want to use it for free? Like how do you get your hands on it? Well, the first way is to start a trial. I think the trials are normally 2 weeks, so you can, start doing something serious and start to understand how it works. They do take your details, and you might get a call from Salesforce within minutes, but nonetheless, you can ignore the call, just get learning and get stuck in with learning what Tableau can do for you. Except for the trial will run out and you'll get stuck. What people don't often know is there's another part of Tableau which sits on a separate website, but is also running in the cloud, called Tableau Public. And that's what I have on this tab. And Tableau Public is essentially a good way of learning Tableau without having to pay for Tableau. And you might think, well, that's really, really strange. So what are the limitations? Well, the limitations are that you can only connect to certain data sources, and I'll show you this a little later on. And you can only save your work to Tableau Public. It doesn't mean that the work is always public. It just means that you always have to save it to the cloud. It's a bit like only having the ability to save files to Google Drive in the cloud. It's exactly the same sort of concept. Tableau have their own storage platform that stores all of this work and creates this wonderful gallery where you can go and see what other people are building with Tableau. And they're using the exact same version of Tableau that can do what you can use Tableau for at work. So in terms of learning Tableau, you can install this at home, you can play around with datasets that you're more familiar with, and you can learn everything you need to learn, because the real only limitations is the ability to connect to a database and where you save your work. Of course, you're not going to be saving your work on your laptop at home. That's not going to be something you do if you decide to try Tableau Public, but it's a very, very good platform. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. Tableau Desktop and Tableau Public are virtually the same, and they work just as you'd expect, pretty much the same way. The only difference is Desktop is a paid product, Public is free with limitations of where you can save and what you can connect to. Everything else works pretty much exactly the same. Okay, so any questions so far? Let's stop there, because I've not covered Tableau versions, but I think I've covered what is Tableau, and I've covered the Tableau platform, and I've covered the licensing. So any questions so far on those topics? I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, I'm going to go and strike out the things that I believe I've covered. If I haven't covered these, you guys can hold me honest and let me know. But I'll try and keep it simple. This is a crash course. I also have to keep things moving as well. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything in the comments. So what we'll keep doing is we'll keep pushing on. The very last thing to be aware of before we install Tableau or do anything is what version of Tableau you're using. You see, Tableau like to make things complex with all their innovation by creating new versions of Tableau every quarter. Essentially, you'll get one in March, you'll get another one 3 months later, and so on and so forth until the end of the year. And then every single month, you'll get what are called patches. These are small updates that improve the previously released versions. So the best way to show you this is go to a website that I don't even know what it's called. The way I get to it is actually quite funny. So I searched this term that used to be a term that was only ever used, I think, as of 5 years ago, but it still works. So I type into the search bar Tableau, ESDALT. I have no idea what that means. If anyone knows what that means, let me know. You can see it's actually here. Alternate download site. I don't think that is it. That can't be it. But when you get there, you can see all the releases of Tableau. And to me, this is the best place to understand the different versions. Because on the left, you can see the paid products. You don't have Tableau Public here. Tableau Public is downloaded from the Tableau Public website. But you get Tableau Desktop, Prep, Server, Online, and Bridge. We're just focusing on Tableau Desktop. And so you can see here, you have 22.4, which was released in December, 22.3, which was released, let's go down here and have a look, October. And as I expand these, you can see that there's actually other versions in between. And this is what I meant by patches. You see, in June here, for example, when they released 22.2, it was working fine. And then customers get in touch with some issues. And then in August, a month later, they update it again. And they keep doing that even as new versions are getting updated. So if your organization is using an older version of Tableau, let's say you're using 21.3, you still got an update back in December of 2022, just last month. And so it's really important to make sure that in your organization, you know what version your organization is using, and you make sure you stay in lockstep with that version, because it just means everything's going to work swimmingly. You won't design something with a new feature and then find out you can't share it with people because you've published it to a server that doesn't support that feature. And that leads me to the next point, which is each of these pieces of software are upgraded individually, but the features within them occasionally need to be used for the same version. So let me give you an example. In the most recent version of Tableau, they released a mapping capability called the intersects function. I just released a video about it. Now, if I used 22.4 and built out a dashboard with that feature, but then my server, which is an on-premise server, hadn't been updated to 22.4, you can see that that doesn't exist yet. I'll explain why in a second. That feature wouldn't be visible to end users once I've published it up. In fact, when I go to publish it up, the server would tell me, hey, you're going to have a problem here because I've seen this feature is not available. And so you're probably wondering, well, hey, you just said that the features are updated every quarter. What about Tableau Server? Well, as of 2022, Tableau stopped updating Tableau Server every quarter. Instead, they only update it twice a year. So they update it in January. So we're about to have the next update very soon. And they update it again around about summer. So you can see when did this come out? October, not even summer, end of summer basically. So you get one in January and one in summer, which isn't great. And so this has been a big change and it's caused some challenges in some organizations. But just be sure that you still get patches. So even though they might not be updating Tableau Server with new features every quarter, they still update them every month with fixes and patches. So it's still worth doing these updates so things run stably. Some organizations might sort of forget to do that because of the less frequent updates. And so the key thing to remember here is that whatever version of Tableau Desktop you're using, need to make sure it's working with the same version of Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud. The other thing you won't see in this list is Tableau Cloud. And because Tableau Cloud is run by Tableau, it doesn't need a download. You simply go to a browser. In this case, let me show you my Tableau Cloud instance. And if I go ahead and log in here, I forgot my password, so let's try again. When I log into it, everything is available here immediately. When I install software on my computer and I sign into the server, everything will just work. There are no upgrades required, and I can just go ahead and use it. Tableau Desktop, the latest version, will work happily with Tableau Cloud if you're using Tableau Cloud. So if you're using Tableau Cloud, update as often as you want. It's always going to be up to date. But for Tableau Server, just wait until your organization does the update. Okay. What I'll do is in the edited version of this video, I'll put a graphic up that explains this a little bit better even. So just be sure to look out for that as well. Okay. So let me go ahead and scratch that off my list. We've done Tableau versions, we've done licensing, we've done the platform, we've done an explain of what is Tableau. Now let's look at desktop and public. Okay. Now to download them, Tableau Public is a little bit funny, and I'll start with Tableau Public first because that's the version that most people can go ahead and do right now for free. There's two ways of using Tableau Public. The first way is to use it here in the browser. The second way is to download it. Now, most people will tell you to download it, and if you want to kind of simulate an experience that you'd have at work, I would say also go ahead and download it as well. That's the best way to actually experience it. And if I go to the Create drop-down up here, select Download Tableau Desktop Public Edition, it takes me to a page. It asks me to sign in if I'm not signed in. And if I click the button, it always asks for a few bits of information. This is just marketing. I can never get out of this. But go ahead, install, put your details in here. You can put like an alias if you want to, and download the application. That will allow you to download the software for Windows and Mac. Once you've done that, run the installer. There's nothing to set up other than just literally clicking OK, agreeing with the terms and conditions and letting that run. And then once you've done that, you're pretty much good to go. You'll have the software ready to run. If you want to use it in the browser instead, if I go back to the home page, all you need to do is go ahead and sign in. So let me go ahead and do that. And once I'm signed in, you'll notice that I actually have a profile. So my profile picture is just up here. If you're new, I think it walks you through the experience a little bit. And once you're signed in, what I actually encourage people to do is don't go and try and build something straight away. Do something a little bit more crazy, which is go find some of the trending visualizations right now. Priya Padam here is a colleague of mine at the Information Lab. So if I actually go to her visualization right now, any visualization which the author has made available to download, if you go to this button just right here, you can actually open it here in the browser and start to edit it straight away. So I can go ahead, click on that button, make a copy, and I'm immediately in the web editing experience for Tableau Public. And actually, this is the same web editing experience you get for Tableau Desktop if you use it in Tableau Cloud or in Tableau Server. And check this out. I can even go into the visualization, I can open it up, and I can even see exactly how this has been built. This is just such a powerful capability. And so this is how easy it is. We've been streaming for such a short amount of time, but I've already shown you how you can get free access into Tableau just by using Tableau Public to go and see how other people are using their visualizations. Now, granted, this is a little bit intimidating, okay? We've got a lot of things going on here, but later on today, we'll actually build this exact chart. We won't have it looking as nice as Priya's done here because that formatting takes a bit of time. So we're not going to do that. There's no time in a crash course, but we will build this map with these circles, and I'll show you how to do all of that. And everything here should look a lot less intimidating by the time we're done. Okay, so let me just go back and close this. If you want to know what I'm doing, I'll just try and annotate it a bit more. I'll go ahead and close this up here at the top. And I don't want to publish this because this is not my work, and I don't want people to think it's my work. It's Priya's hard work, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and create anything, go ahead, edit something, but you can also just go to create here at the top, select web authoring, and it takes you to a blank canvas. And the blank canvas is great because you can then go ahead, upload the data from your computer. If you've got a text file, a CSV, Excel files, these are all possible just through this, okay? Now, that's the web experience of using Tableau Public. What about the desktop experience? How do you go ahead and install the software on your machine? Well, you go ahead and download it and install it. And then once you've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to swipe over to my Windows machine because I have my Windows machine just behind my desk and I'm remote desktoped into it. And over there, I actually have the different versions of Tableau already running so you can see the difference. So the first thing I'll do is open up Tableau Public. You can just install the software, and when you've done that, you can see it just becomes available to you to install over here. So you can just go ahead and click on that and you're pretty much good to go. And when you open it up, you're met with this interface. And this is actually the classic Tableau interface when you open it up for the first time. Whether you're using Tableau Desktop or Tableau Public, it's all the same. On the left-hand side, you have what's called the connection pane. The connection pane allows you to connect to data. In the middle, we have the open pane, and this open pane is a bit different in Tableau Public because what it shows you is some of your most recently worked on work. It's a bit like your recent documents in Google Drive or on your computer. The other thing that it also shows you is some of the work that you've pinned. So once you start to do a lot of work, you can actually pin them to this location so they're always visible as well. And then very lastly, the last thing we have on the right-hand side is the Discover pane. This Discover pane essentially links you to a couple of things. Some getting started resources, which are just covered here at the top. These pretty much show you how to use Tableau. They're going to be hopefully just as good as my tutorials, if not better, because the people who put them together make the product. So hopefully they'd be, much better. You have a link to Visit the Day. Now we were just on Tableau Public. Visit the Day is essentially a visualization that's been voted as a community favorite or has been selected to be showcased for the community on that day. And sometimes they come through here in the product. And the very last thing is resources. So these are things like the Tableau blog, sample datasets you can get stuck in with, and the current status of Tableau Online and Tableau Cloud also available there. So sample datasets is really good because it's a really good way of understanding how everything works, and you can sort of bring it together as well. Okay. So that's the interface. Now, you're probably wondering, well, how is this different from Tableau Desktop? And this is actually the best place to show you the big difference. Okay. When I go ahead and select more, you'll see that I get only 3 options here. So if I wanted to connect to a database such as, let's say, Microsoft SQL Server, or I wanted to connect to something like Snowflake, that's not going to be available here because Tableau Public is limited. It only lets you connect to flat files, which are these files here at the top. So Excel, text, JSON, Microsoft Access, PDF, spatial files, and statistical files, essentially any file on your machine. And then the servers it lets you connect to are Google Drive, OData, and Web Data connectors. Essentially, these are basically other places where you might store some of these flat files and or web data that just doesn't make sense to put behind a price wall because Tableau doesn't build those connections. So that's the limitation here initially with data connections. If I go ahead and close that option, the other limitation is if I go over, let's say I go over to the data tab, you'll see that I have very few limited options up here at the top. And when we go over to Tableau Desktop, you'll see that you get a much bigger range of options. And one of the things you can't do is save to your desktop. So if I click on this little icon here on the very top left-hand side, let me just highlight that a bit more. When I click on that icon, what it does is it switches to the visualization building setup essentially. And that allows me to see the full range of options still in Tableau Public. But now if I go here and try and save the document, it's not going to let me save it to the computer. So here, it only lets you save to Tableau Public. So that is the limitation of Tableau Public in this particular instance. It's not going to let me save to my desktop machine. That said, if I go to server, it will show me the options that I would expect to see, but in order to save this anywhere, I'm always going to need to go back here and select Save to Tableau Public or Save to Tableau Public As, which allows you to rename the file or write over an existing file. So those are the core limitations of Tableau Public. Everything else works exactly as you'd expect. There are like some tiny quirks. For example, the behavior with Google Docs is slightly different in public versus desktop. Again, that's an intermediate thing. We don't need to worry about it. Okay. So that is Tableau Public. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this little Tableau icon on the top left again to go back to this window. The only reason I'm clicking there now is because I haven't connected to any data. So that's the way to switch between the windows by just clicking that icon on the top. Right, let's switch to Tableau Desktop and show you how that's different. So let's go ahead and go down to Tableau Desktop, which is just over here. Now, immediately you can see there's a lot more going on. In my connection window on the left, we now get the full breakdown of things you can connect to. So we have the files that we had before. These are just here. We have the server-based connections, and we also have what are called saved data sources. And saved data sources are just things that have been saved for convenience. They're not necessarily data sources that kind of get, organizations can put in that folder for you. It's essentially just an easy place to put things you work on very frequently, a bit like your desktop, but you can put them there so they're very easy to access. So we'll talk about that maybe in an intermediate session instead, but don't worry about them today. The server-based connections are a lot broader, so you'll definitely see that this list is a lot more impressive. And the thing to point out here is that you might have seen that a few of these loaded once the window opened. So these options here loaded once the window had opened fully, and that's because these actually live on another part of Tableau called the Tableau Exchange. Think of it as like a marketplace, except for right now everything is free, so it's kind of like a weird marketplace where everything's free. At some point they're going to start selling something, so for now these are all free connectors made by these companies and or Tableau, and you can go ahead and use them alongside all these other connectors. So I'm pretty certain you'll find your database in this list. If you don't find your database in this list, what's most commonly used to connect to those databases is sometimes ODBC or JDBC connector. Essentially, it's a open source way of connecting to certain data sources using a certain protocol. And the other option is the web data connector. If it's web-based data, you might instead use a web data connector to connect to those sources. But pretty much everything else is going to be in this list. And if it doesn't exist, well, typically either someone has built an ODBC connector or there's going to be a connector down here that lets you connect to it. So pretty much everything is covered. Okay, so let me go ahead and minimize this list because it's quite a daunting list. And to be honest with you, most people, when you open Tableau first time, don't try and connect to a database. Just connect to the sample data source that's being given to you. We'll get to that in a second. If I go to the bottom, you'll see something called accelerators. Now, I don't know why Tableau tries to confuse people, but accelerators are just templates. Think of them as pre-built dashboards that you can use to accelerate your work. Essentially, someone's done the work for you, so you don't have to. Except for the fact that these three dashboards here were never built with that in mind. These three dashboards are actually sample workbooks. The best way to think of these sample workbooks from a professional perspective is they are a good benchmark for understanding how things should work in Tableau when it comes to speed and performance. So if you open one of these three workbooks, let's go ahead and do that now. I'll open up the Superstore workbook. If you click on them, it opens them up in another window. If you open one of these up and your laptop or computer is really struggling to work with these specific dashboards, it probably means your laptop or computer isn't appropriately spec'd, and that happens really rarely. But if these are slow, your whole experience is going to be slow. But if these are working fast, they're interactive, they're working quickly, you're clicking on them and things are happening like you'd expect a normal tool to work, then things are working pretty well. Now, right now, this is taking a bit longer because I'm on an M1 Mac and, everything's a bit weird. Actually, no, this is on Windows, so it's just taking longer. I don't know why. But this should just work. So for example, when I hover over these data points, I should get nice fast tooltips. When I click on them, the whole visualization should react. You should get a nice sort of snappy experience switching between the tabs. And of course, we haven't published this up to the browser, but if you were to publish this to the browser, generally speaking, you should be seeing roughly the same sort of performance. So that's why these are a good benchmark. Again, I don't want to confuse you too much by clicking around and doing a bunch of different things. I just want to show you what to expect when it comes to performance and load times and how things should work. Okay, let's go ahead and actually close this because we don't I've actually ended up opening this again, so that's fine. What we'll do is we'll keep this open for now. We'll keep it here. We don't need this window for the next step. But if I go back to the connection window, just by clicking on that icon again at the top, you can see that we have the accelerators still here on the bottom, and you can now see we have an item here in the open pane. Now, when I hover over it, you have this little pin icon that you can click on. It's really, really small. I'll try and highlight it here for you right there. That keeps this workbook in this position. So essentially, this won't move anywhere. If anything gets opened, that will always stay on that top row. If you have a lot of them, you can arrange them as well. You can move them around just to sort of get things nice and tidy. Now, if you want more templates, you can go over to this right-hand side and select more accelerators. Templates. And when you do that, you'll actually find that there have been some dashboards that have been made that already try and answer certain questions. And actually, just like we did with Tableau Public, where we went to find different dashboards you can work with, here you can go and find dashboards that you can actually use at work that connect to things that you might be familiar with. For example, Salesforce. Maybe you're in a finance team and you want to go and see what other corporate finance teams are building. The only word of caution I'll say to you is that some of these dashboards have been built by, people, everyday people in the community that build fantastic work, and you can tell because they look really, really good. And some of them let's just say that the jury's out on whether they look good or not, but the work that's been done on the connection has been fantastic. So they are set up correctly, and you can really generally trust how they've brought the data models together to support the visualizations that you want to build. So if let's say I want to search for a dashboard that talks about a wealth investment or insurance broking. So let's go ahead and search insurance. I can't type, so let's go search insurance. Insurance. Is that actually correct? No matching content. Insurance. I can't spell, can I? Let's just type this. Let's type no matching content. There's nothing on insurance. That's so weird. Okay, let's go to corporate finance instead and just look at what's here. So the most recent one here is this executive KPI dashboard by Bistree. I actually know who built this, but I think it's a really nice dashboard. I think it has actually been, this is one of the sort of better aesthetics that you get on the Tableau Exchange. And this one's actually customizable. You can click on it and do a bunch of stuff with it, download it and use it. And it's got a how to use page and everything. So you can really kind of do some awesome things with it. If I scroll back up and I go back, let's find one more. Let's go back here. Let's find one more. Let's just go back down. Let's go see what else do we have. These are all a little bit strange. Let's go somewhere else. Let's see if we do have an insurance section. I don't know why it wasn't coming up in the search. If I scroll down, I'm going to looking for these ones because these are the ones, the information I built where I work. So of course I'd look for them. So let's go look at this insurance underwriter performance. I also know who built this. Is a colleague of mine called Ellen Blackburn even. Her work is fantastic. She's just really got a great eye for design. And these are dashboards that really excel at showing you what's possible with Tableau. So if you want to use these, absolutely get stuck in and get involved. Anyway. I'm here to teach you how to use the tool, not how to use templates. So the very last thing is the Discover pane on the right-hand side. The only way this is different from Tableau Public is we have a little bit more of a training section, a slightly longer list of resources, and you often get updates from Tableau Marketing on the bottom right. So you can actually sometimes see things like conference announcements and so on and so forth in there. Now, if you're really sort of advanced in your organization, it is possible to change this whole right-hand side section to point to a web page instead. So in this right-hand side section, you can actually point to a specific page in your organization. And so you can put information for people who use Tableau straight away. Maybe it's guides, maybe it's information about who runs Tableau, status updates, all of that can live on the right-hand side of that. And again, I've done a video explaining how that works, and it's really, really good to see. Okay. So I think we have done what we need to do on this interface. I'm now going to switch back to my Mac so we can actually start working with some data. So let's go ahead and go back and make sure we cross off what we have covered and what we haven't covered. So we've covered Tableau Desktop and Tableau Public and just the difference between the two of them. We're about to start connecting with the data. So let's go ahead and strike that. A note about installation. I think I've already covered how to download them. The installations are pretty straightforward. The only thing worth noticing here is whatever version you downloaded and installed last becomes your default version. So it is possible to have multiple versions of Tableau on your machine. This is for the purpose of upgrades. If you've just upgraded to a new server and you'd still like to have the old version around so you can check things work correctly, that is an important step. So if I let's grab my applications folder here. Let me just show you this. I typically have the last two versions of Tableau. So you can see here I have 22.3 and 22.4, 22.3 and 22.4 for Tableau Prep. In Windows, it's exactly the same. Whatever you last installed becomes your default version that's installed on your machine. So bear that in mind. If you want to make it a default version, let's say you want to make an older version, the default version, you need to kind of run the installer again, and that will become the default version on your machine. Otherwise, just pay attention to what you're opening and closing and make sure you don't make that mistake like I have done sometimes, okay? So just bear that in mind. Parvin, for your benefit, the recording, this is YouTube, everything's recorded, so it will be available, so don't worry about that. I just saw your comment at the corner of my eye, so I thought I'd cover that. So that's the only quirk with installation. You can install multiple versions. The latest one you've installed becomes your default. If you want to make an older version the default, install it again. Simple as that. Right, let's go ahead and cross this out. Okay, finding the right documentation. Generally, the last thing I want to cover. You would be amazed how often people do not know where the documentation for Tableau is, because I think most people assume that documentation is generally poor, but Tableau documentation is exceptional. It's really, really good. It's one of the things I'm worried about with all the layoffs at the moment, that will probably be one of the places we do see things get worse, because it's the kind of thing that only people who pay attention really go to. So if I go to tableau.com, and I'm going to show you this just from the Tableau website, because I think this is just so important to know. You go to the resources tab, and if you go to support and you go to Tableau help, it takes you to this page. And this is the Tableau documentation. The thing to pay attention to is that over here on the left-hand side, you have the version. So remember earlier on, I talked about being aware of what version you're using. This is an important thing to bear in mind, because if you change the version on this left-hand side, it changes the documentation to the right to match that version. And so you want to make sure you're looking at the documentation for your version, because you might go find the version that talks about a different operating system or a different sort of technique because you're using it in the browser versus desktop. Just make sure you're looking at the right version. Once you've selected the version, you'll see that the right-hand side updates. You can expand any of these, and each of them get a full link to the full documentation along with a bunch of other resources. Now, if you're a real geek like me, you can just go ahead and click into all of these, and it's great because it not only tells you what's new and how things work, it actually breaks down everything you ever need to know. The very final tip, I'll give this tip to you for free. When you've clicked into the right version of the documentation, if you go to the search and then search for a topic, it's only searching in that version for notes. So it's not searching across all notes, it's just searching in that version. That is such an invaluable thing, because so often people will go, if I go back to this page, they'll go to this very top search bar here, which searches everything in Tableau documentation, and that often tends to return the latest version. And many people aren't on the latest version. Most organizations tend to be 1 or 2 versions behind. So they're actually often, well, they're not always reading the wrong documentation, but if something small has changed in that version, they could be reading the wrong instructions because there's something different that's changed. So that's how to find the correct documentation. If you're going somewhere where there's not going to be internet or where it's unreliable, grab the PDF and save it in Evernote, save it on your phone, and you can search the PDF instead. I do this, I'm a consultant. I have an offline version of these saved in my note-taking tool, and essentially I can go in there and search that, and that searches inside of the PDF for me, and then I can get the notes. But you know, the internet's pretty good nowadays. We don't have to worry about offline modes too much. But yeah, that's how to find the right version of the documentation, and just make sure that you know how to use it accordingly. Search, Control Find on the page, and you're pretty much good to go. So let's go ahead and cross that out, and let's get actually stuck in with this session. So Elaine's asking, at what time is this dinner break? I've only been going for 40 minutes. I think I can go longer. The great thing is, look, you guys are on YouTube. You can hit pause, go do whatever you want, and then come back and hit play. I, on the other hand, am streaming, so I have to just keep going. And I think I'll probably keep going. But if you want to break, just pause, come back. You will maybe miss out on the live action, but I'll probably take a break for 5 minutes in a couple of minutes, maybe to look at comments and look at questions, and we'll carry on from there. Okay, so we've done the introduction. This is going pretty well. I think we're on pace. The next bit is going to be getting started and connecting with data. We've talked about the connection interface, but I want to go into this a little bit more detail. So let's go ahead and open up Tableau. Actually got comments. Oh, there's a little nice comment pane here. So let me move it across to this view so I can see that more clearly. So here, this time I'm on my Mac, just for everyone's benefit. I'm on my Mac, and everything looks exactly the same. Maybe sort of Mac specific things are on this particular page. And you can see that I have this connection pane on the left-hand side, okay? And this connection pane is pretty important because depending on what you're trying to connect to, you need to go to the right section to select that file. For argument's sake, let's say that I want to connect to a CSV file, like a text file with some information in it. I can go ahead here and select text, and what it will do is it'll open up my connection window, my file window, sorry, and you'll see here that at the bottom it's looking for these types of files. So if you're not sure what type of file Tableau is expecting to find when you select an option, you can just go down here to the bottom, and on Windows it's pretty much the same, but it just looks like a Windows interface. it will tell you what files it's looking for. And that's why these are all grayed out, because none of these files match the criteria of this list. And that's essentially what you need to sort of look out for. Now, how do you know the file extensions for these things? Well, it's just a little bit of experience. Like Excel is .xlsx or .xls or whatever Excel has been over the years, that's what it's going to be. That's a very well-known file format. Text files, on the other hand, are a little bit broader. You can have .text, .csv, .tab, .tsv. TSV is tab separated values. CSV is comma separated values. And it goes on and on, okay? The JSON files, now this is a web optimized format. So you can see here, it's only looking for one specific file. I'm looking right here. If you're wondering where I'm looking, I'm just looking here where it says JSON file. That's one specific format. That's known as JavaScript Object Notation. I think that's what, no, JavaScript, yeah, it is JavaScript Object Notation. And what that means is essentially it's data stored in a specific way, typically from web-based systems. So if you go and export something from an internet-based system and you just ask for the raw data, typically it will give it to you in JSON. So you can connect directly to that as well. If I hit cancel, you can connect to PDFs. Now this is a bit hit and miss. The PDF scraping, you know, it's got a capability built into Tableau that uses a scraper that goes and looks into the PDF and tries to find the data across multiple pages. But it can be hit and miss. It's not always reliable. So try it. If your PDF has data, you think Tableau can grab it, try it first. You might save yourself a ton of time copying and pasting. But if it doesn't work, then yeah, you might have to resort to something a little bit more advanced or simpler. Just copy and paste yourself. Spatial files are quite an interesting addition to Tableau. They've been in Tableau forever. I don't know why I say addition, but they can be connected in sort of a couple of ways. Now, spatial files are typically this whole range of files. I won't go through each and every one of them explaining them. The ones you're typically going to see used commonly with Tableau are these Esri shapefiles, .shp, GeoJSON files, which can come from web applications like Google Maps and so on and so forth. And then you've got KML files and a couple of other files that sometimes come out of similar systems. So KML, KMZ, you might have this MIF and .tab as well. Those are very specific. And then zip files typically also contain spatial data within them as a package, and that's why it comes as a zip file. So Tableau is able to sort of work with all of that, and that's why here you can actually see that it's highlighting the files it can see. So all this time I've been going through the files, it's not been capable of connecting to them. Here you can see that it's happy to connect to these two files. So let's go ahead and find some data to connect to. Let's go ahead and to do this, I'm just going to go to a website and try and find some data. I wanted to give you sort of an honest experience of connecting to data that you've just found on some sort of website. So I'll go to Kaggle. Kaggle's really, really good. It's gone to a data set that I used a long time ago. So let's go back and let's go to the datasets tab, and we'll try and see if we can filter this. And you can filter by specific file types. Let's just select a CSV and hit apply. And you get sort of a list of different files. I'll connect to this top 100 Spotify songs. This looks pretty good. And you can get a little preview of the data. So let's go ahead and download this. It looks pretty small, but let's go ahead and download it anyway. Oh, I need to register. All right, let's go ahead and sign in with Google. And once we've done that, I should be able to download this. Let's go ahead and do that. And yeah, I'll save it to my desktop just to keep things nice and easy. Once it's on my desktop, I'll show it in the Finder, and I will unzip it. Okay, so now that it's been unzipped, where is it gone? Let's see, where has it put the file? Oh, hello. It's not, doesn't seem to be showing up. Let's click out and click back in. Right, let's try this. I'm pretty sure it's on my desktop, so let's just go try and find it. It's a CSV file, so if I select text file and I go to my desktop, you can see here, there it is, a list of most streamed songs on Spotify.csv. And if I just click out of it, you can see all these other files don't match that criteria. That file does. I select open, and you go into what I call the connection interface. Now, let me just give you a quick overview of this interface. The connection interface is broken into what I call 3 sections. You've got the preview section on the bottom. The reason I start with the preview is because people always want to see something familiar first. So this is where to go to see your data that you've just connected to. You get a list of the field names on the left-hand side of that preview pane, so you can see what that is as well. And then on the top, you have what is called, I'm going to call it the data modeling window. Oh, Siri didn't like that. So let me take my watch off so it doesn't try and interfere with the live stream. This is called the data modeling window. And in this window, you can essentially build data models and work with your data. I'm trying so hard not to get into really advanced topics, so bear with me, but I'll explain what a data model is very, very briefly in a second. You don't need to worry about it. And on the left, you have what is essentially a list of your connections and the resources that you can bring into your connection and use. Okay. So what is the workflow for connecting to data? Well, as soon as you connect to data, the first thing you should look for is what is the connection called? This is essentially going to match the name of your file. And if you want to, you can change this. The easiest way to change this is just to double click here at the top and you can change the name. I'll call this Spotify. Spotify, hit enter, and you'll see that that changes, but it's not going to change the actual name of the file that I'm connecting to. Yeah, so the name of the connection is changed up here, but it's not going to change the name of the file that I'm actually connecting to. That is always going to be the name of the file. And once I've connected to the file, just below it, I'll highlight this in red, you have essentially the different things that can be in that file. So when we connect to an Excel file soon, you'll see that this is slightly different. But here, I've just got this one file here that you can see, list of most listened to songs on Spotify, which is essentially the file, the CSV file. And then on the bottom, I'll highlight this in green, you have essentially a couple of new features. So you have the union, which allows you to bring data together. We won't cover that today. That is, again, it's not really an advanced topic, but it's just not sort of pertinent in this particular sort of crash course. And then the new table extension, which really is advanced. Don't need to worry about that at all. But very briefly, this allows you to use analytical applications to bring in data from other systems like Python and R to bring data alongside your normal data. Okay, so that's the left-hand side of the connection window. Now, when you've done that, let me go ahead and remove this. When you've connected to your window, you see when Tableau automatically does something for you when you connect the first time, it goes ahead and brings something into this space for you. And as soon as you drop it down, you get the preview we saw before. So in essence, when you connect to something for the first time, it's already done for you. And so you're probably thinking, well, what do I need to do? Well, it's already been done for you. It's right here. But if you don't see that, or if you want to bring in a second item, what you need to do is just go ahead, grab the file and bring it in and drop it in. And now you get a preview. The other thing is you might want to see your data in a sort of more spacious window. And if I hover over the file, you can see there's a little tiny box that appears just here where I'm highlighting. It's disappeared because I'm not hovering over it. But now if I hover over it, you can see it's right there, this little tiny table icon. And when you hover over it for long enough, it says view data. You can open it up and go ahead and view the data. So if I just go ahead and drag this out, oh, it's not letting me drag it out. There you go. Let me drag it down. No, it's not going to let me drag it down. It's just going to let me drag it out. That's absolutely fine. I won't complain. And it shows me the data. So essentially you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Okay. Now that I'm here, it's important to notice a couple of things that Tableau has done. Firstly, it's gone ahead and looked at our data and understood that each column represents different types of data. So types of data just mean numbers, text, values, and you can see that it's calling this one ABC, this one ABC, and this one ABC. Essentially, it thinks that these 3 columns contain text. Okay. Now, we can see that this column here contains dates. So we're going to need to correct that. We'll come back to that in a second. The other thing, though, is that this column here called rank, it's seeing contains numbers. And you can see it's got a little hashtag for numerical values. And the same again for streams in billions. So although this number says 2059, I'm not sure if this 2059, I don't know if this is 2 billion and 59 or if this is 2059 billion. I hate this kind of stuff. I think this is 2 billion streams. We can go on Spotify and have a look, but I'll just assume this is 2 point something billion streams, okay? So all of that information is called metadata. Metadata are essentially information about data. It's essentially the core information that tells you what is in your data, and you can then use that metadata to make sure things behave the way they should. For example, numbers should be treated with numerical values. text should be treated with text behavior, text values in essence, okay? So how do we change these? Well, if I close this preview window, you'll see that just over here on the bottom, let me just bring this pane to the left, I have the same preview that I've just seen, but it only shows me the few 100 rows. I know that because it says 100 rows right here. So if I set that to 1,000 and hit enter, it will show me 1,000 rows. It's still showing me 100 rows. I don't know why. It might be a bug on my Mac version, but it should show you whatever number of rows you type into that space. Now, when I go to this column here at the top, you can see that I can actually click on these as well. So let me go to the date column here, release date. And I'm just going to tell Tableau, look, can you change this to another data type? And when I click on that, I get all the data types that are available. So I get number, whole numbers, date time, date, string, spatial, Boolean. These are types of data. And if you're not sure what these are, go ahead and just Google them. They're pretty straightforward. Literally, once you know them, you know them. You don't need to learn them again. But they're pretty straightforward. In this particular case, I know that this column that I can just see right here, when it says 29th of November, that should be just a date. There's no time. There's no like 29th of November at midday. It's just a date. So if I go ahead and click date, Tableau does something very smart. It goes and processes all that text and tries to make sense of the date. And because Tableau is good, it's actually gotten very good at that I'm confident that it's got it right. So you see here, it says 29th of November, 2019. I'm in the UK, so this is the correct way of doing dates. don't come at me if this looks completely wrong to you. This is the correct way of doing dates as far as I'm concerned. And so now it's changed that to dates. You can see that we have a calendar item right there ready to go, and this has been understood and everything's going to work nicely. So we can go ahead and start using this in our visualization. Now, if I wanted to bring another data set in, I could. But again, this is a crash course. We're just going to work with single data sources for now. I've done many videos, and other people have done many videos about how to bring two data sources together. When you're doing that, you're typically doing something called a union or a join. And if you're working with Tableau, there's also this new concept called the data model. I've also done a video on that, so go and research that. But for now, assume we're connecting to one data source. We've got one connection. Everything is set up nicely. Now we're ready to visualize our data. What we can do is we can just go down here, and Tableau's kind of telling you this the whole time. Go to this step to go to the worksheet and start visualizing something, okay? So when I go ahead and click on the space where it says sheet 1, we're into the building window. We can actually start building a data visualization, okay? And now I'll go through this in a second, but I want to show you a couple of other ways of connecting to data as well. So that's pretty much the flow for connecting to data. Now, let's say you want to go back to the data connection window. You maybe realize that something is wrong and you need to change the file. Well, you can do that at any point. Just because you've started building the visualization doesn't mean you can't change what you've already connected to. So to do that, you just want to go back to this data source tab here. So if I go ahead and select that, it takes us back and we're pretty much golden. We can just start changing everything again. We can rename it, work with it, but everything's going to work as you'd expect. It's going to be pretty straightforward. So that's essentially the first example of connecting to a file. We've connected to a text file. We're ready to work with it. We're ready to visualize it. We can kind of put a nib on that, bow it off, and say we know how to connect to text files. Okay. The next file I want to show you is an Excel file. And Excel files are the most common files you connect to in Tableau. I hate to say it. People should be using databases, but Excel is just so common. So this is what you're going to have to connect to. So how do we connect to that? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that, having connected to one connection already. You see, if I go back here and I start trying to add a connection here, Tableau is going to get confused because it might think that we want to bring the data together. We want to kind of put these two files together. I don't want that at all. I want a separate file in my workbook to work on a separate visualization completely. So how do I do that? Well, if I go back to sheet 1, let's say I've built a visualization, you can see that here at the top, I have a plus icon next to a cylinder. Now, a cylinder is typically the icon they use for databases pretty much everywhere. If I go ahead and click on that, you'll see that I get the same window that we got when we were connecting to data at the start. So that connection window, it also lives here. Essentially, you should be very familiar with it. And this time I'm going to choose the Microsoft Excel file. Okay. When we choose that, I want to go over to my documents folder, and I want to make you aware of a folder that Tableau installs on your machine in pretty much every case, unless you work in an enterprise organization where they've decided to take that file away from you. And it's called My Tableau Repository, this folder right here. Now, this repository file comes with every installation of Tableau. And if you double click it, you'll see that it actually has a few things. It has some sample workbooks. It has logs. If you ever have an issue with Tableau, this is where it will drop them. It has data sources that you might have saved, and it has a bunch of other things, okay? One of the things I like about this is because in that folder, you should have another folder with the version of Tableau you have installed. Now, I only have 22.4 on this particular setup, so I'll go ahead and double click that. And then I'll go ahead into that file and I'll look at the English version of the data sources that I have. And you should also find in your version of this folder, in your documents folder, this file here called eusuperstore.xls. Now, this is a great file because it allows me to show you something, and I know for a fact that you should also have this file. If you don't have this file, I'll put a link to this file in the document so you can find it. The thing to note though is that depending on your version of Tableau, these files are different. So if we start visualizing something and you see a slightly different number, don't worry, we've all got the same data source. It's just that they change them from version to version. They maybe tweak a number here, tweak a number there. Sometimes the totals don't quite add up, but generally speaking, all the sort of columns are the same. So just follow along with columns, and as long as it looks the same, you're in good company. And we've got two versions of the file. We've got a European version and an American version. Because most of the YouTube audience is American, I'll go ahead with the American audience. The second biggest country on my YouTube channel is India. There is no Indian version of this. Maybe we should make one as a nice little side project. Let's make an Indian Superstore version with Indian locations that are more specific to the Indian market. Maybe we should do that. Let's go ahead and select the sample file, select open. And when we do that, Tableau thinks about it and it takes us back to the connection window. So you're probably thinking, well, hell, hold on. Last time we had the CSV file. Where has that gone? Well, it's not disappeared. What it's done is it's created a new connection. And the new connection allows you to basically switch between this connection and the previous one we made with a CSV file. And if you just go to this top little drop down, you can see that the one we renamed, if I just go here, you can see the one we renamed previously called Spotify is right there. And if we click on it, we go back to it. And if we click on this cylinder again and go to the new one we've just connected to, which is an Excel file, we go back to that. So you can switch between all these different connections just right here, okay? Now, if I go back to the Excel file, you'll see that it says right here that it's an Excel file. Let me change to my red annotator. I prefer that one. Now, we've selected this Excel file, and in the Excel file, it has 3 tabs. If you're familiar with Excel, we have tabs across the bottom. You have, well, you just have tabs. It depends on what they are, but each of them could contain information. And so what Tableau is telling me is that, look, this file contains 3 pieces of information. It has an orders table, a people's table, and a returns table. And if I'm not sure what they look like, I can, of course, remember, I can go ahead and preview them just by clicking on those, and I can see, this data actually contains information about orders made at my Pacific store. Let's go ahead to the people table, connect to that, also good. Returns, connect to that, also good. So this just allows us to look at the data sources and understand what's going on. Okay. Now, you'll notice that as I connected to each of those, these icons changed. I don't know if anyone noticed. If you don't believe me, rewind and look at the icons again. These icons have changed and they've gone to a green square with a little sort of tag. And the tag lets you know that this data is actually coming from a named range inside of that Excel file. If you're not familiar with name ranges, I've done a whole video on this. So go ahead and look at the video where I talk about name ranges and Tableau. I talk about this in a lot of depth. But the key thing here is that when you're working in Excel, in fact, let me just go to Excel and I'll show you. If I go to Excel here, I have it open. If I say make a table, let's make a, oh, my cursor's not working. There we go. Let's make a table of fruits. I've got my annotator on as well. So let's go ahead and say apple and pear. Okay. And I could say this costs £10, very expensive apple, and this costs £5. Okay. Now that's a piece of information. That's data. Now, if I highlight these, okay, and create what's called a named range, if I just go to the data tab just up here, and I can never remember how to do this. Where is the named range options? The actual easier way to do this is just to go to the home and format it as a table, which is, where is the format as a table options? My God, I'm really bad here. Well, I found the name range options instead. I can't get this dark mode version of Excel. It's just clearly throwing me off. So if I select the table, select define name, you can see that it tells me the name range here. It's just pointing to that sort of square. If I select OK, that becomes a named range. And that is essentially what we have. You can see here the named range is called Apple. And it starts with this row, and that is essentially going to be visible in Tableau as Apple when I connect to this Excel file and start working with it. So that's what a named range is. And people use them in organizations all the time to sort of section out data where you have multiple things on an Excel page. That's essentially how to connect to each and every one of those individual tables. And if it doesn't exist, you can go ahead and connect one, and it allows you to pick out data from a page full of information. Okay. But for now, what I really want to look at is orders. So if I just scroll up, you can see that we have the orders view over here. What actually happened with this is the icons didn't change. I scrolled down. That's what must have happened. This interfaces. What is happening with Tableau interfaces recently, honestly? So this never used to scroll down. This just used to move down to make space for it, but it's deciding to scroll. So it didn't change icons. Anyway, here's the orders table. To bring it in, we just drag it in, like I showed you before, and we get the same preview as we've had before. Our data's here. It's pretty good. We can customize any of these as well. We can do anything we need to do, and it's pretty much good. Now, the final thing I'll show you is that there are some data prep capabilities in this window. If I go to this little drop down, you can see that I have the ability to split and do custom splits, essentially break out the data, and in some cases even pivot the data if I need to do that. So in this case, if I just select split, Tableau looks at that column of information and it automatically splits it out into 3 columns. You can see here at the very end, it's added them in. And a little clue to let you know that those have been created here is that if you look here at the very, very top, just in this section, you'll see that these have a blue marker and these don't have a marker. The blue refers to this blue over here. So when you're connecting to multiple things, they might have different colors, and those colors will show up on the columns to let you know which table they've come from. That's basically it. Okay, so that's why you don't get a blue icon here at the top, because these have been created inside of Tableau rather than just in general. So now that we've done that, we're pretty much good to go. We can go ahead to sheet 1 as Tableau hints us to. So I'm just going down here, selecting sheet 1, and we're back here, ready to build some data, ready to work with our visualization, and we're pretty much good to go. If I look here on the top left, I now have 2 data sources, Spotify and Superstore, and that's pretty much everything you need to know about that. Okay. The very last thing I'll show you how to connect to is a database. So you've connected to a flat file, you've connected to Excel. The last thing I'll show you is a database. Databases are pretty common at work, so it would be a pretty bad tutorial to not show you that. So let's go ahead and connect to a database that I have access to. Now, to do this, I need to be super careful that I don't share my credentials on the screen. So just give me 1 second that I just don't give you all my information to my database. And I make sure that I have it in another window and I can type it in appropriately as and when I need to. So let me just, where is this? Where have I put this data? Honestly, I should be more organized. Here we go. So I think we're okay. One thing I'm slightly concerned about is that I might have security settings on my database that stop me connecting because I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Long story short, for security reasons, sometimes it's good to tell your database not to let you connect from certain locations because those aren't locations you're supposed to be connecting to the data. So for this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this. Can I move this window to another window? Yes. I'm not going to show you this until I've filled it in because I don't want you guys getting all my database details. So let me fill it in off screen. Apologies, this is probably the worst. This is the worst live streaming thing to do, but you can't dynamically fade out stuff. I trust you guys won't be stealing my email and everything, but I need to just be able to log into this database and do that. So all I've done is I've typed in the credentials. Now, I've actually done a video on how to connect to Snowflake, so you can go watch that video where I have blurred everything out. But as soon as I connect to a database, you'll see I get a different kind of window. It's not like what we've seen before. For Snowflake specifically, I get what's called a warehouse, and each database has its own sort of setup. So you might get different things in. You might have like a warehouse, but the warehouse means something else. You might have a data lake. You might have all of these terms. You might have schema as well as an option that turns up in here. Depending on the database, they're all slightly different. this follows the terminology of that database. So I'll go select my warehouse. In Snowflake, warehouse just means how much computing power you want to use. So I have one called compute. This is my own database. I use this to run this YouTube channel and everything that goes on with my channel. And then I've got a demo database, a Tableau demo database with demo Tableau data. So if I go ahead and select that works. Then I can go ahead and select the schema. This is the public schema. And in the public schema, you can see that I have 3 pieces of information. I have my employees table, my invoices table, and my orders table. This is all dummy data, so there's nothing sensitive here. My orders table, I can preview it just like I showed you before, and it looks exactly the same. So these options are just slightly different because I'm connecting to a different type of data source. But if I go ahead and close this, you'll see I also get an option to do custom SQL. Now, if you're the kind of person who just knows how to write their SQL to connect to a data source, you can actually go ahead and just bring that in and paste your SQL in here, and Tableau will go and run that query to return the data that comes back and use that in here. The advantage is you could do a lot of data preparation in this window, but a note about custom SQL. It can sometimes slow Tableau down, especially if you're using a live connection. So just, use it with caution. And the other nice thing is with custom SQL, you can insert a parameter that's controlled by the user that actually runs in this window. So if you've got a live connection, and you want to give the user the ability to choose some sort of variable from the database, so your database just not chucking everything at the user, you can actually use a parameter in this window to do that. That's just worth noting. But nonetheless, same as always, drag my orders table in. It looks exactly the same as we've been using before. Table there, preview at the bottom, ready to go. Go to sheet 1, exactly as you'd expect, connected. Okay. So we've got 3 connections. We've got our Snowflake connection, we've got our Excel connection, and we've got our CSV connection. All 3 of them are up here at the top. Now, you're probably wondering, well, great, let's start visualizing our data. Let's start working with this information. Well, the tricky thing is actually we're not done. And let me just sort of take a break to sort of check what I've covered here. So the connection interface is done. Let's strike that out. Finding data to use. I didn't really cover that, so I'll come back to that. Connecting to data. I kind of feel like I'm doing that now, so I'll cross it out ahead of time. And yeah, the next thing we're going to come to is the Tableau extracts. So you see, the easiest way to explain this, without going into too much detail, is that Tableau extracts are an optimized format of data. Right now, everything we're connected to is connecting live. The way I know that is that each of these cylinders are just cylinders. So these are all live connections. What does that mean? That means every time I do something in Tableau, Tableau is actually going to that file and querying the information. Every time I do something with this particular connection, it's going to Snowflake, querying the data and coming back. Now, that's fine, but if you're trying to build a dashboard at work, that's actually not fine, because what happens if the database goes down whilst you're building something? What happens if you just want to build something quickly and you don't want to worry about the latency and the networking issues in your organizations? You just need to get on with work. And so Tableau has another way of capturing this, which is essentially by taking a snapshot of the data. What it does is it goes off to the data source, it takes a snapshot, but it remembers where it got the data from. And when it takes that snapshot, it means that it saves it into a more optimized format that allows you to do a little bit more with it. And it also works considerably faster. It's also a lot smaller. So a good example, if I took let's say a 200 megabyte CSV file, like a text file, Tableau would compress that down to about 10 megabytes. Much, much more portable, much faster. It's going to be much faster than opening a text file and looking through it and querying it for information. And the added benefit is that extracts also allow you to do certain things that you can't do with just normal connections. Again, it's a little bit beyond the nature of this crash course, but you can do a little bit more with it. So how do you take an extract? Well, there's a couple of ways. If I go back to any one of these, in this case, let's go back to my Excel file. I can right click on it and I can select Edit Data Source. When I do that, it takes me back to this window. And I wanted to show you another way of coming back here just so that you know that you can do that. Okay. Now up here on the top right, you can see there's an option that says extract. I completely missed this before because I wanted to wait until I was here to kind of talk a bit about this. And you can see the default option is live. But what I'm saying is you should be using an extract. Okay. And so let's have a look and see what happens when you switch over to the right hand side. You see, when you go to the right hand side, it says extract will include all data. It's not created the extract yet. It's just telling you that this is going to include all data if you were to take one. But here's the advantage. You can change what data comes in. You can change what data comes into your snapshot just by selecting Edit, and Tableau gives you this window that allows you to choose what data you'd like to bring in. Don't worry too much about the stuff here at the top. All you're paying attention to is the filters pane here in the bottom. Okay. When you select Add, it shows you all the columns in your database. So let's say I only wanted to bring in cells from a specific subcategory. I could go ahead and select OK, choose that subcategory, select OK, and now I've limited my data to just the art data for my extract. I've not deleted it from the database. I've not deleted it from the file. I've just brought in a tiny sample of that data because maybe this is all I'm analyzing. If I select OK, that's all fine. And now when I go back to my visualization to start using it, Tableau actually asks you, hey, where would you like to save this extract? And this is kind of confusing because you're probably thinking, like, whoa, I thought you were going to save it in the workbook in this particular file, and you're not going to take a copy of my data. But in actual fact, Tableau does need to write the file somewhere. It likes to kind of write the file. So I always say to people, look, save it to your desktop because we're going to delete this later. I'll show you why. Save it to your desktop, and when it's done, you know you have an extract when you go to the top left-hand side here, and it has two cylinders with an arrow going from the first one to the second one. Essentially, it's telling you that it's taken an extract, and now it's using that extract. Okay. And so if I go and ask Tableau, hey, what subcategories do I have in my data? I'll just go ahead and drag subcategory onto text. You'll see the only data I have in that file is art. But if I want to connect back to the live data, let's say the database is back up and everything is great, I can go back in, right click, untick the use extract option, and all the data comes back. Okay. So just by switching that on and off, I can switch between whether I'm using my snapshot or whether I'm not using my snapshot. Okay. Now, the other reason people use this particular extract feature is because they're only interested in a small part of the organization. And other people use it to optimize the way they build their workbooks. They want to make it go faster. They want to make it easier. And so again, that's a really great way of doing that. Okay. So that is an extract in a nutshell. There's definitely more I could talk about with extracts. There's definitely more you can learn. Go ahead and Google the topic, look on YouTube. I've done videos. Other people have done great videos on this. Go ahead and check them out. In the recorded version, I'll maybe put up some links to some resources that I think are fantastic, that I've not made, other people have made, that I think you should check out. Okay. Great stuff. So we've created an extract. We could do the same with this first one as well. And this is another way of creating an extract. You can just right click the file here, select extract, and you get the same window. This time here, rather than in the connection window, you could add a filter. In this case, I won't. I'll go down to the bottom right, select extract. It will ask me where I want to save it again. I'll hit my desktop, save. And you'll see that this extract has a different time zone to the underlying data. Essentially, Tableau is looking at the metadata to understand, hey, what's going on here? I'm fine with this. I know this is fine. I'll select don't show again, click OK. And again, we have an extract right there. So pretty easy, pretty simple. Now, at this point, this is when I start to save the work. Okay, I don't want to go through all this effort making connections and then forget to save it. So if I click on Tableau and I go to File at the very top, I can go ahead and Save As. Now, if I click Save, it will just go ahead and open this window. And it will want to save it in my Tableau repository. I don't want it in my Tableau repository. I want it on my desktop. So let's go ahead and select my desktop. And you'll see it gives it a name called book1.twb. I'll call it livestream. Okay, giving it the file livestream. Now, this file extension is super important. So many people make this mistake, so pay attention. Okay, a TWB file is just known as a Tableau workbook. At the bottom, there's another type called a packaged workbook. Okay, and the packaged workbook not only contains your data visualization, but it also contains your extracts and any data sources, as well as assets like icons and images. Those all get packaged into a TWBX file. And so most people, I think, generally want to save everything in one file. They don't want to save it in lots of different places, then have to go back and find it and relink it, especially if we're about to delete the extract from our desktop. We just want to go back here and save everything in one file. So if I go ahead and select that, we're going to save it as a TWBX file, hit save. It will go ahead, save it. I know that's saved because here at the top, just the annotator's kind of gone in the way. Here at the top, you can see it's called live stream. And now that's saved, okay? And so what that allows me to do, if I find my little icon, is I can go ahead and I can now safely delete these two, because they are actually now in my workbook. They've been saved as a package workbook. If they weren't saved, it would just save a TWB, and the next time I try and go and do something, it would still be connecting to the local files. And it would basically have a panic attack because it's saying, hey, I had extract, they were on the desktop, where have they gone? And so to fix that, the only way you can kind of get those back is to go back, connect to the original data source, and regenerate the extract. Essentially, this option here, there's a couple of options sometimes here you can use to regenerate the extract, refresh, re-update. Tableau will kind of give you a hint as to what it needs to do, but that's where you find these sections. You can mess around with these options, figure out what they do, Google them, whatever, but we won't cover that in much detail. Go check out the videos on extracts that have been done by the community, okay? And now, even though I've got my extract in my workbook, I can go ahead, right-click, untick use extract, and it brings everything back in. Because what it now does is it goes to find the extract, realizes it's not there, then goes to the main file and brings all the data in. If I go ahead and extract the data, this time removing my filter for subcategory and bringing everything in, select extract, we take the extract. You're probably wondering, why am I repeating extracts? It's because people don't get it. So just want to make absolutely crystal clear that you understand what extracts are, okay? The very final thing, you can see a tick mark on the data source that I'm currently using, okay? If I go to another data source, you'll see that I don't get that tick mark because I haven't brought anything in and everything goes orange. If you're into that zone, you're skipping way ahead. Just go back to the data source you were using, select that, clear the sheet, just removing everything. Or if I go back one step, there's a back button right here. If I go back one step, you can just go ahead here and select clear the sheet. That will clear everything. And now when I switch to another data source, that blue tick isn't there and nothing's changing orange, okay? You just want to make sure you don't get confused. This is exactly what happens to people, and they get so confused and they realize they're creating blends and joins. It gets crazy. So make sure you're working on the data source you're supposed to be working on by just making sure you clear the sheet, or you create a new sheet if you need to, okay? So that is an extract. I've covered extracts in pretty good depth, okay? Now, the next thing to sort of touch on is the interface. I mean, come on, I've gone right into Tableau and I've not shown you any sort of interface whatsoever. So let's go ahead and actually explain this interface a bit more. I'll move my annotation tools out of the way. Let's put them in the middle of the page because then they can't really get in the way. Okay, so you've connected to Tableau. At the very top, you've got what I call the toolbar. Okay, the toolbar has a bunch of different things. Often you'll see me going to this toolbar throughout today. I'll even forget to just mention that I'm going there because for me, it's muscle memory. I've just sort of gotten used to going up there and doing different things. It's got some of the most commonly used things that you do with Tableau. If you hover over each one of them, it tells you what they are. I don't want to go through each and every one of them, but essentially you've got the back and forward button, okay? The back button in Tableau is very good. Like it will go back as far as you need to, pretty much since you've opened the file. So be very careful how far back you go. Really make sure you go to the right step. Don't undo your work and then start doing something and then lose the sort of forward history that it's actually built up. You've got a couple of other options. You've got the data connection window. You've seen the cylinder. We've got the pause button. Don't worry about the pause button just yet. If you're working with really large data sets, research what this button does. You've got the sheet option, so clearing the sheet, copying the formatting. All of that is up here. You've got the ability to rotate charts, some highlighting, grouping, formatting, views, setting the screen to fit different sizes. All of that is up here. We'll cover it as we start to go through the session. Now, the left-hand side is called the data pane. Now, the data pane has, surprise, surprise, your data. And each of the columns in your data sits on this sort of left-hand side pane. And you can remember we had these icons that basically talked about different data types. Well, those exist here too. If I just highlight them in green, all the data types are right there. And you can hover over them and look at them, or you can click on them and change them if you believe they're wrong. The other thing is you'll see that Tableau split this data into sort of two arbitrary groups, and some are blue and some are green. Okay, well, this is nothing to do with the types of columns they are. Okay, people often make that mistake. They say, "Oh, it's because it's a difference between, dimensions and measures," which is what these are actually called. So these are typically called dimensions in blue, and in green we have measures. Okay, that actually isn't the reason why. You can have a dimension turn into something like a measure. For example, a date can both be a dimension and a measure. You can have 2020, the dimension, the actual year, and you can have 2020 as a timescale, as in a line that becomes continuous or a measure, essentially. So, in essence, let's not get into that just yet. Well, when we look at dates, we'll go into that into more depth. Okay. But the thing to note is, obviously, when you click on each one of these, you can change the data type, and you can even, it's actually not letting me do that. Why is it always coming up with a geographic role? That is really bizarre. What is going on today? Look at this. I swear that never happens. Normally, you're able to change this. Okay. So there's obviously some changes going on in Tableau. Either I'm just completely out of kilter, but previously, when you clicked on this, you could change the data type. Okay. Now, if it's not letting you do that, you can actually go down into this option and change the way it works. You've got default properties. You've got different things. Depending on what the field is, you can obviously go down into this little triangle and you get a whole bunch of options that let you change what it does. Okay. And this is pretty much consistent with every single field. Whatever field I hover on, you'll see this little tiny arrow. Let's see if I can isolate it. Now, I can't isolate it because it disappears when I hover over. But this little tiny arrow on the right-hand side of each pill as I select it gives you more options. And in those options, you can change a bunch of different things. Okay. Now, the power of that is if you realize something's wrong, you can change it. The other thing you can do is if you realize something wrong, but you're not sure, I always recommend right-click on one of these, duplicate it, and you create a second item. Then you can try whatever you need to do with the second item, but you're not going to break the main item. Essentially, what Tableau has done is it's created a calculation. We'll go into calculations a little later on, but you can see here that it's got a little equal signs next to the ABC. That means it's a calculation. Okay. Now, the other pane that you probably don't realize is there is called the analytics pane. You can just see it here. I'm highlighting it in green at the top. And when you switch to it, you get some of these aggregation types and the ability to add things like reference lines and some of the statistical models as well. We'll come to this probably in another stream, but in essence, the only time you really want to be using this is if you're using reference lines. We'll touch on this today, how to use them and what are the options, but we won't go into a lot of depth. So we'll just touch on them briefly. I'll show you where everything is and then we'll kind of skip along. Okay. And then after you've sort of looked at this left-hand side of the data and the analytics pane, you've got the bottom section, which is essentially where the data source and the sheets live. So all the sheets, all the dashboards, you click through them here on the bottom. On the very, very, very bottom, you can probably see here that it's my name. That's essentially me logged into Tableau server. And that's why my name is coming through there. And then over here in the middle, you can see that I have three things. The pages shelf, the filters shelf, the mark shelf. The two things to pay attention to are the filters, essentially allows you to filter things like you would in Excel, and the marks pane, which controls charts. We'll come to that very soon. And then on the top, I'll highlight these in red. You've got columns and rows. This is an important thing that controls charts in Tableau. And the very, very final thing is you've got the canvas. Here you can see the whole general space that says sheet 1, sheet 2. That's just here in the middle. And those are pretty much all the arrows. So when I refer to columns, rows, shelf, filter shelf, marks shelf, those are the things I'm referring to. I'm referring to these sections of Tableau. You can move them around. For example, if you want the marks pane further up, you can do that. You can bring the pages shelf here at the bottom. Totally up to you. You don't have to leave them as is. Most people leave them as is. I leave them as is because I do tutorials, so I want them to stay the same. But broadly speaking, that's where everything is. The last thing, which I hate people using this, not because I think you shouldn't, but because people use it as a crutch. And I think if you learn Tableau, you shouldn't need to use this, but show me. Show me allows you to understand how to build charts. The problem is most people end up basically using it forever and always getting it to build their charts for them. Okay. So that's the interface in a nutshell. That's everything you need to know. Everything I'm going to be calling out will be in these areas. When we go to a new interface, I'll keep showing you the introduction as well so you can understand it. But that's pretty much it. That's everything in one go. Okay. So I've covered the main interface. Now, the last thing I haven't done is finding data to use. This is a bit of a topic slightly out of kilter. I don't know why I put it there, because I should have put it at the end or something. But the common places to find data sets. Actually, if I go back to Tableau Public and I go to the Resources tab, you can get the sample data. And here they have a list of businesses and sample data that you can get started with. So if you're just learning, this is a really good place to just go and find some assets that you can use straight away, and just, ignore kind of all the hassle of having to clean the data or whatever. Everything's just good to go. This is a really good place. The other place is, of course, Kaggle. Kaggle is great for sort of openly available data sets and everything that you can kind of go to that the community is talking about. People like to sort of dump data sets on there. So that's a great place to go and find something that you may be passionate about and start working on it. The other thing is, if I go back to Tableau Public, you've got these community challenges and resources. And let's see if I can find these. So if I go to the, let's go to the Tableau community page. Well, not Tableau Public, Tableau community. Tableau community. Wrong place. No, this is not what I was looking for. If I go to this page is on the Tableau homepage. You can find community projects. Here you go, community projects. And in the community projects, there are a couple of projects that give you data sets to use on a weekly basis. So Makeover Monday, run by Andy Kriebel, allows you to do that. I think it was Andy Kriebel and Eva Murray. I think they're both doing it again. It's gone through sort of different hosts over the years, but I think it's Andy and Eva at the moment. Workout Wednesday, started by Andy, but I think hosted now by a bunch of people from the community. This is basically a weekly challenge where you can download a data set and then they try and give you something to recreate in Tableau, and then you can see how it's done. If you don't know how to do it, you can just look at the answers. If you do know how to do it, you can kind of give yourself a challenge of figuring it out. And then there's a bunch of other sort of opportunities here. I won't go into all of them, but all of them are fantastic. They're really, really good. And I think they're a great sort of learning resource for understanding where to go and find data that just allows you to get into Tableau. Some of these are not Tableau specific either. Some of these have data sources and data sets for other tools like Power BI. If you're into SQL, some of them challenges do get done in SQL as well. I'm not in that sort of world, so I don't know too much about that. But nonetheless, you can go and find great data sets from these places. The other thing is the internet. The internet just has lots of different data sources that you can use as well. So that's pretty much a good thing to go to. All right, let's go ahead and strike this out. Right. How does Tableau work? So yeah, that is a big question. So what I'm going to do, I think I do need a break. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm going to go grab some water, grab a drink. Then we'll come back and we'll carry on. Okay. So if you've got any questions, now's a good time to put them in. When I get back, we'll kind of look at them and answer them. But when we get back, we'll just hop right in and we'll just start using Tableau straight away. Okay. So yeah, leave your questions in the chat below. I know you guys have been leaving questions, so I'll look at them when I get back. And then we'll try and figure out sort of what we're going to do next. Okay. So a funny thing is if I go to sort of the comments tab, you can see that I've got your comments here. So I can sort of see what you're asking. If I go up here, dinner break, we've already covered that. Sam Siram, doubt about how to create a network diagram. Network diagrams are super complex. This is not going to be where we do that. I'm not going to lie. To do a network diagram in Tableau, it's not a native chart type. I'll give this to you for free before we have a break. The native chart types that are supported by Tableau are right here in this little drop down, and network is not one of those. But what you have to do is use one of these chart techniques to create a network diagram, okay? And so that requires a little bit of working with maths. You have to understand a bit about how networks come together, the mathematical formulas, and then go ahead and build one. In other places, you might already find a template. Remember earlier on I talked about accelerators? Well, people in the community have been building templates for a long while. They don't live in the accelerator, but people have built network diagram templates that you can go out and look at, and they explain how they're built and they explain how they work, okay? Apex Smart, you're welcome. Absolutely happy to be doing this stream. Hi Tim, do you have advice or approach or framework for handling complexity in a Tableau project? For example, if there are multiple data connections that are needed, lots of LODs and so on. Okay, many thanks. Cool. I'll get back to that in a second. It can get overwhelmed with the complexity and wonder if many others face this kind of issue. Yeah, complexity in Tableau is really tough. The thing I will say though is that I think businesses oversimplify the challenges. Things are complex because no one has spent the time to make them simple. Does that make sense? If you end up in a situation where you need to do a ton of LODs, you're trying to do a bunch of calculations inside a Tableau. My gut tells me you need to be doing some of that work in the data pipeline. And no one likes that answer because, you've probably been told Tableau can do 100 different things. But if you start doing too many things in Tableau, the performance starts to slow down. And then it kind of becomes like an application. And with applications, you don't see fast applications that don't run off optimized data sets. If you go to like Facebook, everything behind the Facebook website or the Google website is designed to work just for Google and Facebook. And so when you're building a dashboard, I always tell people, try and build a data set that's just been designed to answer that question, and you'll find you don't need to do many, if any, complex calculations. The only time you need to do that is if you're really stuck and you can't go back to the data source and create them. The other thing is try and position things as a prototype. This is what I do. So if I have to build a complex calculation in Tableau, I'll always say, yes, I'm happy to prototype that. I start framing it as a prototype. And then if it ships, I ship it as a prototype. So people know that what I'm doing inside of the workbook really should live in a database where other people can see it. Observability is a term that's becoming really popular at the moment. Observability is this concept of being able to understand where data is being used in your organization, but also be able to trace where data is being used and how it's being used. So if people are using this calculation for this metric or this calculation for that metric, and they're using the same data source, observability allows you to see that and, sort of build a high level understanding of what impact changes or, changes in how metrics come together can sort of impact that. So I always recommend trying to move things further back in the stack into the database so that things get easier in Tableau. If you can't do that, then you're kind of stuck with Tableau, and there's not much you can do because Tableau is not a data prep tool. Tableau Desktop is not a data prep tool. All it has is custom SQL and calculations. It's not a data prep tool. Tableau Prep, Alteryx, SQL, all good tools for doing that stuff. But if you don't move those optimized outputs back into the database where they are better stored and better served to things like Tableau, you're always going to have this sort of challenge where things are a little bit slow. So there's no perfect answer, and without seeing your exact use case, it's kind of hard to sort of explain that, but that's pretty much sort of the scenario, okay? So we're going to have 5 minutes. I'll come back in 5 minutes. I just need to grab a drink and have a breather. Just literally, I always forget how much talking is done during a stream. Absolutely crazy. So let's go ahead and have a break, and we'll be back. To do this, I'm just going to go back to my countdown screen, and let's go back to the countdown screen. And what I'll do is I'll just get rid of this, and you can see me editing in real time. This is absolutely awful. Oh God, this is actually so bad. So let's do this in real time. And what we will do is we will, oh, where's my editing window gone? Here we go. We can add a text box saying, be right back. So be right back. I could add a timer, but there's no point doing that. Where did it go? There you go. Right there. Make it larger. Can we make it larger just like that? Yeah, there we go. There you go. Bit of behind the scenes magic. Editing it just in time. Okay, so I'll be back in 5 minutes. Catch you soon. Okay, we are back. Just had a quick sip of Coke, a slice of pizza. I have ordered a pizza tonight ahead of this to keep life easy, and then I barely had a slice before I started, so here we are. Anyway, let's look at this to-do list. So we're kind of halfway through. We'll fly through these. The chart types are very easy in Tableau. They don't take long to do. So if you're looking at this going, how much longer is this going to be? We'll probably be done in the next hour. Okay. So if you're watching this and thinking, how long is it going to be? Another hour. We pretty much should be done. Right. How does Tableau work? Well, I've shown you the interface, and this is a very difficult question to answer, but I'll answer it by telling you how the technology behind Tableau works. Okay. When Tableau was created, the biggest innovation about Tableau was how it allowed any user to work with data without having to write SQL. So if I go to Sample Superstore here, and I drag category onto rows, and I drag sales onto where it says ABC, you'll see that I get the total sales for each category. The innovation that Tableau made was that I didn't need to know SQL to create that query. But of course, if I'm connected to a database, obviously something needs to be writing the SQL because databases only work with SQL. So here's how Tableau works. If I go to the help menu and start a performance recording, it's a bit of a random place to go, but let's just bear with me. If I start a performance recording, Tableau starts basically recording what's going on in the background. And now let me drag, let's drag subcategory onto rows. You'll see I get a list of subcategory. And let me get sales and put it on columns instead. You see, where I dragged it changed the behavior of Tableau. It built me a bar chart. And now if I stop the performance recording, go back over to the help tab. I don't know why it's under help, but let's go ahead and stop the performance recording. You'll find that Tableau shows you what was going on in the background. We'll wait for it to load. There it is. It's coming up. And here's the secret. If I just drag the slider and I just go down to this, executing the query, when you drag and drop things in Tableau, what it's actually doing is writing SQL for you in the background and sending that to the data source. That's it. That's essentially the core innovation behind Tableau. It's giving you a visual interface to run SQL. That's why the IP, the technology behind Tableau, is called VizQL. Essentially, it's allowing you to write SQL using a visualization sort of technique. And so that's literally how Tableau works. When you drag and drop anything onto one of these core areas, essentially anywhere here, you are telling Tableau how to build a chart. And it's interpreting that and building the chart for you, or you can tell it to change its behavior to do different things. One of those two. So you've just seen how I built a bar chart. It's very simple. Okay, let's clear the sheet again. Going up here to the toolbar, click that. Let's try that again. I want to do a bar chart showing the sales for each subcategory. That's how the question might be framed at work. I'd go ahead and drag the subcategory onto rows. That puts it onto rows. You can see that each subcategory is taken up a row. That's how I remember it. And then sales is what I want to put on the bar chart. The total sales, I'll go put it on columns. And Tableau understands that to mean, hey, let's draw you a bar chart for this particular chart type. And notice this is just in alphabetical order. I've not changed this. This is just how the data comes in. Actually, strictly speaking, it's data source order, which happens to be alphabetical order. But that's just how this data source works. Now, what if I want to change this? Well, normally bar charts are vertical. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? You go from the bottom up, not from the left to the right, although sometimes you do have them like this. How do I change that? Well, it's exactly as you'd expect. If I wanted the sales on rows and the subcategories to be vertical, I'd just swap them around. So let's clear the sheet and do the exact opposite. Let's drag subcategory onto columns. you'll see it goes across, and then sales onto rows. And now they're vertical, okay? So that's essentially the secret here. And there's actually a quicker way of doing what I just did if you get it the wrong way around. If you go up here to the very, very top, there's a, oh, no, that's not the right annotation tool. Let's just go here. If you go there, there's a little sort of switcheroo icon, I call it. And if you click it, it just swaps these two items around. Yeah. So these two items that I'm hovering over and you can see my mouse moving over, that's all it's swapping around. Okay. Excuse me. So now that you know that, the next thing you might want to do is to change the way this bar looks. Normally you go from largest to smallest or smallest to largest, right? Well, again, there's a bunch of icons to let you do that. Just here at the top, you can see that I've got this descending and descending icon. If I click that, Tableau interprets that and changes the way the chart is sorted and pretty much does it for you, okay? The other place you'll see that icon is you'll see it also here. So you'll see Tableau is telling you, hey, I've done a sort here. It's going to show you that inside of what we call a pill in Tableau, okay? Tableau hate this being called a pill, but we'll just call it a pill. This looks like a pill, that's why it's called a pill. And it puts an icon there just to let you know that this particular subcategory item has been sorted. The logic is using sales values, okay? So it's sorted this by sales. The other place I can see this is if I just go over here, you'll see there's another sorting icon right there, okay? So if I go ahead and click on this icon over here on the left, you'll see that it also does the same thing, okay? It just switches them around, perfect. And if I go up here, you'll see that, oh, the icon's disappeared. Why is that? Well, when I was clicking through these sorts, you'll see it appears again. It appears again. And if I click it a third time, it goes back to the default sort order from the data source, which means no sorting. And now the icon disappears. If I go to the top, I can actually go here manually to the sort option, select it, and I can change based on an item in my visualization. So I select field, sales, sum, and now you'll see it's doing the same thing, descending or ascending. So this little interface is like the advanced way of sorting. And these two options here at the top are the quick way of sorting. In essence, these are just sort of the fast way of doing things. If you just want to get things done quickly. And if you really want to dial in the way something's sorted, maybe you want to use something not in the visualization, you can actually go here, select that thing, and now I'm sorting things in ascending order of profit from left to right. Okay, so copies are actually the most profitable item, but I'm actually showing the total sales. Okay. So that's how you can sort of customize your sorting and kind of get where you need to with Tableau. I'll go ahead and clear the sort again. I'll do it just by clicking this. I don't want to sort of confuse you by going through and sort of clearing. So we'll worry about that later. It's kind of, I just want to try and keep this as simple as possible. So that's how Tableau works. You drag and drop things onto the visualization. It changes the way the chart works. Now, so far, everything we've been doing, if you've noticed, on the marks pane has had this terminology called automatic. Okay, what that means is that Tableau is automatically guessing which chart type you'd like to see. Okay, so let's sort of see what happens when we change things up. Okay, let's just move things a few around and see what Tableau automatically thinks things should be. If I move subcategory onto color, you'll see that it actually colors this one bar, because we've got nothing in columns, by each of the subcategories. Okay, makes a lot of sense. That's sort of cool to see. Still a bar chart. Good to know. Now let's put this on label. You see, when you put it on label, Tableau doesn't know what to do because you've got nothing in columns and rows. So then it just says, okay, well, let's put it on text and let's color the text by the subcategory. You can see these are all different colors. Okay. So Tableau again has now changed this to an automatic T. You can see it says T, that means text. You can see if you don't actually get this when it says automatic, but if you drop this drop down, you can actually see the different chart types that it's automatically defaulting to just right here. So text is what this one's on, okay? And if you understand this mechanic, you can pretty much build any chart in Tableau. By understanding the combination of what you use in columns and rows and the marks pane, you can get what you need. So let's start by taking on some sort of common chart types, okay? So Well, we've done these two. We've done how Tableau works, and we've built our first chart. That was the bar chart. Let's strike that through. And now let's kind of race through the chart types. We're going to absolutely smash through this. And then I'll explain why I hate Show Me. Right, so a bar chart, you've seen this already. We'll drag the dimension, the thing we'd like to break up our bars with. And we'll, in this case, I'll get subcategory. I'll put it on columns because I want this to be a vertical bar chart. And I'll drag the measure, the numerical value that I'd like to use to control the size of the bars, drag that onto rows, and we're pretty much golden, okay? Now you can customize this, you can change a few things. Maybe you want that sales value on the bar chart so people can see what it is. Let's go ahead and drag sales, and this time you see there's an option here on the marks pane to put it on labels, and there you go, you get the value on the end of the labels, okay? Maybe you'd like to change the formatting of this bar chart a little bit. Maybe you'd like this in dollars or pounds. You can just right click, select format, and on the left hand side you get a formatting pane that's pretty comprehensive. In there, I'll go to numbers and I'll select currency and I'll say no decimal places. We'll do it in thousands, thank you very much. And we'll keep it as pounds. We'll do 2 decimal places. There you go. And now you can see the formatting has stuck through. But you're formatting the visualization. We didn't format the axis. To format the axis, you can just see there's another option right there. Select the axis. And now we can format that as well. Let's go to currency custom. And now that's all good. Now you're probably wondering, well, surely Tableau should do this automatically. And absolutely you can. You see what you can do. Let's open up a new sheet by going down here to pressing the plus sign on a new sheet. Just do that and it opens a new sheet. What we can do is we can tell Tableau that, look, this value here, this sales value has a number format that it should observe across the whole data source. So if we go to default properties and select number format, you'll see that currency can be set to standard and it will just use the currency for the country, or you can set it to custom. We'll set it to English standard, select OK. And now if I build the same bar chart, put that on columns, put that on rows, you'll see that it's using the formatting of pounds. And even when I hover over, the value inside of the tooltip is also pounds. Now, this tooltip is nice. You can see that it turns up whenever I hover over anything, okay? Now, you can do a lot with tooltips. This is not the course for that, but if I select the tooltip option here in the marks pane, I can go in and customize that. I can change the way it works and set it all up. Again, I've done a video on, it's about 40 minutes just on tooltips that you can go and sort of watch and check out. It's going to teach you everything you need to know, okay? So that is basically how to set up a bar chart. If you want to change the rotation, you can just go ahead and do that. Now, you might want to sort of take it up a notch, boss things up. You can have multiple things in your bar chart. For example, if I wanted to add a category as well as a subcategory, I can just go ahead and drag category in front of subcategory and it creates sections. And so this makes total sense. Essentially, this is a hierarchy. And in furniture, we have these specific items. Now, what happens if I get those two the wrong way around? Well, you'll just see it. If the data doesn't support the structure you think that's going to work, you'll just see it in the visualization. It just looks wrong, okay? So if there's a hierarchy, things tend to work much better that way, and you can set things up like this, okay? The very final thing I'll show you is I said I'd show you where the reference lines were. Anytime you see an axis, for example, this one on the left with numerical values, if you right-click on it, you'll see the option to add a reference line. And in Tableau, you get 4 options. Now, most people understand reference lines, but you can also create reference bands, distributions, and you can even mess around with box plots. Essentially, this is where you create box and whisker plots in Tableau. But you can see if I create a line here, it's just going to give me the average for each section. And I can actually change the level that this works at. Again, lots of people have done videos on reference lines, but in essence, I can set it to draw a line across the entire table, draw a line just in each section, or draw a line on each line. But it doesn't make sense to do the average of each line because it will just be the line. So for average, it doesn't make sense. This makes more sense. Where per cell might make more sense is if you're using targets. Let's say you've got targets for each of these subcategories. You could use this option, okay? So play around with these options. This is not the video to sort of touch on that. Just going to let you know that there's a lot you can do here. Play around with all these options. They are as straightforward as they look, and they're really, really powerful, okay? So there's our bar chart. We've set it up. It looks beautiful. One last thing, one very final thing you might do to customize this is to break these bars down based on something else. Let's say you want to show within each of these bars the shipping mode that was used. So I'll go ahead and grab shipping mode and I'll drag it onto color. And so what Tableau will do is it will use the color to break down my bar, and that color denotes the shipping mode. Okay. And you can see I can hover over it. All of that information is in the tooltip. Again, if you want to customize the tooltip, select the tooltips option and just open it. Okay. Now, I see people trying to build charts like this using Show Me, and it's just really hard to do. You'll get lost, you get confused, and you'll end up with way too many things in the view. You don't need to do it. I've just shown you how. You're just using columns and rows and the marks pane to control how everything works. The ship mode's controlling the color. The category and the subcategory are controlling the top level headers and the bottom, basically the columns you see. And the sales values are going across controlling the rows, which gives us the size of the bars. That's it. Okay. Let's go ahead and rename this. Let's call this bar chart. Perfect. Next chart, pie chart. Wow, the most dreaded chart in analytics. This is dead easy. Okay. So for this one, I always recommend people, listen, stop using automatic immediately for this chart type. You could get away with doing it, but just switch this drop down here to pie. Once you've got pie, it's just straightforward. Okay. The size of the pie is going to be controlled by sales. Yeah, that would give me the percentages. And then the color of each section is going to be controlled by the category. And there you go. You have 3 equal sections. But we don't have 3 equal proportions. It can't be 33%. Look at the values. These aren't exactly the same. They're slightly different. So what we need to do is also drag sales onto angle. And now you can see that this actually now is starting to look a little bit better. Okay. So the size actually denotes the size of the whole circle, whereas this sales value on angle denotes the angle. Let's clear the sheet and let's try again with something with a little bit sort of more obvious sections. Let's try a, dare I say it, ship mode. Okay, so let's go back to pie chart. We'll put ship mode on color. You can see we have 4 ship modes. I put sales on angle. Now you can see that working nicely. And I could put sales on size, but it's not really going to do something because the size sort of controls the whole size of the circle. But nonetheless, there you go. That's it. That's a pie chart. Super simple. You might want the percentages on the end of it. So how do you do that? Well, you can do 2 things. You can drag sales onto label, but it's going to give you the whole number. That's not very nice. Okay. So what you can do is you select the one that says T, the label, and you want to go down here to quick table calculation and select percentage of total. That gives you the percentage. And now that you've done that, you can right click on the visualization itself and select format and go to fields and select percentage of total sum of sales. And here you can change the percentage. Okay, so you can say percentage, just no decimal places, and that's it. That's your pie chart done. Okay, nice and easy. Donut chart. Oh God, donut charts. Donut charts are popular, so I'll show you how to do them. Let's go ahead and create a calculated field. To do this, I just need to bring this on screen. And you don't need to pay attention to what's going on here. You just want to do this. Create a value. You could actually even just do this, the number 1. That's what you need to do. We'll just call this calculation 1. Hit apply, hit OK. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and do this. You can see when we put the number 1, it splits it out. But what I want to do is actually find the average of 1, which is 1. Then holding Option or Command or Control, I can't remember which it is on window, I can create a duplicate. Okay. Oh, is it letting me do that? No, it's not going to let me do that. Why is it not letting me do that? There we go. I was holding the wrong key. It's actually Command for me on a Windows machine. And now that I've done that, you see we have 2. And on the left, we also have 2. So on the second one, I'm going to go ahead and remove everything. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the color, remove the size, just going to remove everything. Okay, we just remain with a circle. I'll make the circle larger, actually smaller, and we'll change the color to white. Okay, now you can't see it yet, it's just right there. And the final trick is to go down to the second one and select dual axis. Okay, and then you'll see, oh, it's nearly a donut. And all you need to do is right click on this one and synchronize the axis, and there's your donut chart. The final thing to do is to set the axis to start and finish basically at the same point. So you can set it to start at 1 and finish at 1, and then it sits in the middle. And then once you've done that, you can go ahead, hide your header, and you've got a donut chart. I don't know why it's that complex in Tableau. Don't have a go at me. It's just the way it is. Okay. So there we go. That's a donut chart in Tableau. Bear with me 1 second. I just need to go sort something out. Hold on. Oops, sorry. I think I was muted. Apologies. What I was basically explaining is I think Aditya asked about the dual axis trick. So this trick here, where is the tableau gone? Over here. Okay. So in this particular tab, I use the trick of creating one, and essentially I use a dual axis to create two calculations that sit on top of each other that are basically the same. And that is known as a hack. I hate hacks. I didn't want to show you a hack, but someone asked for a donut chart, so I had to show you the hack because it is required for Tableau, at least for now. I hate hacks, so go check out this video, Hacks in Tableau, to find out why. But this trick, this trick of creating the calculation one and using it to create instances that you can then use again and again, actually happens quite a lot. Let me show you like a real use case for it. Okay, so let's say that I didn't use a dual axis here. Let's just split these two up, and let's say that this color is actually going to be red, just for argument's sake. Okay, now what I could do is I could put these two side by side like that and have them on the left. And I could essentially keep going. I could create more copies like this. And all it's allowing me to do is to take the same copy of the same thing multiple times. But now, each of those pie charts could show different things in one chart. So for example, this one is colored by ship mode, but I could color this one by subcategory, and you'll see that it changes that one. I could go to this one. I could color this by product. This is going to be nasty. Never do that. Please never do that. I didn't teach you how to do this. Well, I just did, but I never tell anyone that I taught you how to do this. It's just not beautiful at all. So this is why you use that hack, to basically get the same instance of something, and then you can do something different with each instance. Now, I'm not going to show you another hack that lets you to do the same thing in a cleaner way, but recently, a new feature with maps was introduced that allows you to do exactly that. You could create multiple instances of something, and using mapping placing, you could essentially get them on different parts of your chart. But again, I didn't teach you this. I don't teach people hacks, apparently. So let me delete these because we don't need all these extra ones. We'll go ahead and do a dual axis on that again. And we'll end up needing to show the axis. Where is the axis? We'll show the header. There we go. We'll synchronize the axis. We'll edit the axis. We'll set the fix so it's 1. The reason I'm doing this on 1 and 1 is so that both of the axes are perfectly aligned and are centered. By only having one value on the axis, it basically becomes centered. Go ahead, deselect the header, and there you go. You can go ahead and format these lines to not show as well. But essentially they're on top of each other. And with the second one, I'll just go ahead and remove the color, set it to smaller size. Why is it changing both of them? Let's see what's going on here. Oh, I think what is it doing here? What did I do wrong? So we've got this one here. Okay, I just need to remove everything on this one. Then make that smaller, and then that works. Yeah, I lost my trail of thought, and then we can make this white, and there you go. It's a donut chart. Okay. Line charts are super simple. First of all, go get the measure or the numeric value you want to use. So in this case, you could use rows. And we just have the total sales in this particular case. And then you want to create a line chart using something that would naturally create a line in a visualization. So for this, I'll go get the order date, drop it in, and we'll set this to day. And you'll see it gets very noisy. Day is too much. Let's go to month. There you go. That's a bit of a nicer line chart. And you can change this again, go to week. That's pretty nice. Now, I'm clicking this little toggle on the right, and I'm just ignoring all of these options, and I'm going straight down here to these dates. I'm doing that because in the next step, I'll explain why. But for now, to create a line chart, it's not going to work if you select something. Well, it does work, but what it's doing doesn't make obvious sense until I explain the next step, which is discrete versus continuous items. Okay. So for now, I'm just going to keep it at month. That makes way more sense. It starts at the beginning of the data set, ends at the end of the data set, and everything's in the scale. Okay, line chart, super simple. You measure the thing you're going to use to draw the line, whether it's dates, numerical values. It's typically going to be two green things, typically. If it's not, then you've probably tweaked the chart a little bit, and we'll see some examples of that as well. Okay. The next one is discrete versus continuous. And I've termed this discrete versus continuous dates, but strictly speaking, this is just discrete versus continuous. So you'll notice that here you have a bunch of blue and a bunch of green items. Okay. Earlier on, I talked about this, and I said it wasn't to do with anything to do with measures and dimensions. It's instead to do with this concept of discrete versus continuous values. And the dates are actually a pretty good way of showing you that. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's drag cells onto rows, and let's drag the order date onto columns. Now, Tableau has a pretty good understanding of dates. So whenever I drag any date field, it defaults to the year of that date. Unlike other tools where you have to go out and build a date model, you don't have to do that with Tableau. It understands dates pretty well. And if I select this drop down, you'll see that I get two selections. I can use the year here at the top, and I can use the year and a bunch of other values again here at the bottom. And so if I select, let's say, this version of the year, you see you still get a line chart, but this item here at the top is blue. However, if I go down and select this year, which also says 2015, it changes to green, and now we get a scale. And so the difference between these blue and green items is actually to do with the fact that discrete and continuous items behave differently in Tableau. Discrete items tend to group data together. So if I, let's say, choose the year and choose 2015, you'll see it grabs everything in 2019 and puts it into the bucket called 2019. But if I choose a continuous year, it tends to want to draw a continuous scale. So you can see here at the bottom, there is no bucket anymore. It's got a scale, 2019 to 2022. And so that allows me to essentially change the resolution of this scale, but it always shows the full range of the scale every single time, because this is a continuous item. So continuous items will tend to want to give you a scale, an axis, and discrete items will tend to want to give you sort of a grouping, like a box that fits everything that's inside of that box. So just to pay attention to that, switch to this version of the year. You can see it says 2019, 2020, 21. These are all buckets. There's no scale. There's no time in that. Switch to this one. You get the full scale as you go through. Now, because I've switched to the full scale, it draws a line in between the different years. It doesn't sort of extrapolate the lines. It just assumes that this is the only data point in the year, and it draws a line to the next year. If I then go down here and select quarter, the axis stays the same length, but now the axis gets more granular, and now you get more information. This is still continuous. If I then go to quarter up here, something different happens. You see, if we select quarter, it goes discrete, as I described before. But this time, it's grouping up everything in every year in one quarter. So this is not just Q1 for the first year, it's Q1 for every year, and this is Q2 for every year. I can show you that by dragging order date in again, and you can see this is the years at the top. Okay? And now you've got two discrete dates and a continuous item. The continuous item is generating the scale on the left-hand side. But the two discrete items here at the top are breaking up my line chart into different components. Okay? And it's still a line chart, still broadly creating what we need, but each of these dots is sitting inside of a bucket. The bucket is the quarter. If I change that second one to a continuous one, you'll see it gives me a full scale in between each quarters. Okay? So that's like a very brief but important guide into the difference between the blue and the green fields. That's why they're those colors. They make charts behave differently. Anything green will want to draw an axis. Anything blue will want to group everything into one particular dimension, whether it's the year, whatever, that the child of that dimension will be the grouping, essentially, whereas anything green will give you a continuous scale, as much as the scale allows. Okay? So, knowing that, you can sort of manipulate dates as we've just done. We've drawn a couple of different line charts here, but you can change the way these work just to kind of get different combinations working. So maybe you want these lines broken down by year, but you'd like the continuous months inside of them so you can visualize these lines. That's going to work really nicely. What you could also do is you could take that visual separation, instead of having them here on the chart, you can drag the year and put it on color. And now you'll still get the continuous scale because those months fall in specific places on the scale, but it's now colored in different colors, so it's easy to see. However, if I go here to the month and I make these discrete, you'll see that it groups all the months together. So all the Januaries go into that bucket, all the Februaries in that bucket. But because I've put the year on color, it's splitting out the lines by color. Okay. So again, the behavior changes. The pills on the different parts of the chart changes the behavior, and that behavior gives you the different chart types. And with that logic, you don't need to use Show Me. You can pretty much get through most of what you need to know in Tableau just by learning how this interaction works. Okay. So let's have a look at this. Let's see what we've done so far. Oh, I did too much there. I have to do them one by one. Apologies. I need to do this, otherwise I'll lose track. This is taking a little bit longer than I thought. So what I might have to do is come back tomorrow and do the final sections after we've done the charts. And then the stream will just sort of we'll just do another stream and you'll find it on the channel, and then I'll edit them into one video and it'll just be one video when it's all done. So I'm just slightly conscious of time. Okay. So let's keep going. The analytics pane in Tableau. So far, we've done bar charts, we've done donuts, we've done line charts, we've done different types of line charts with discrete and continuous. Let's build something different. Let's build another bar chart. Let's go ahead and build this by region. Let's go ahead and do that. Yes, that's great. And we'll build, let's say profit. That's pretty nice. But let's say I want to break that down by shipping mode and put that over there. Okay. We've just sort of changed the dynamic a bit. It looks a bit different. It's nice to see. If I go to the analytics pane, just up here, you can see where my mouse is shaking. You get different options that you can sort of bring into the visualization. So if I wanted to create that reference line we saw before for average, I could have just dragged that in, and it gives me the same options I saw in that reference line pane, just it's right here. So I can go ahead, drop it on the pane, and now I get the average for each pane. Dead simple. I can bring another one, drop it in the table, and I get another one for the table. That's how it works. So all of these are sort of aggregations, and you can go ahead and simply use them to change the way the chart works. So that's it. That's all you need to know about the analytics pane for now. As you drag them in, it tells you where to put them, and you can use that to sort of customize them. If you want to edit them, you can click on them and select edit, and then you just get the same options I showed you earlier. Okay. In the that's the analytics pane. It's super simple and short. Let's do a few more. Scatter plots. So for a scatter plot, you typically need two axes. So let's say we're going to have sales and we're going to have profit, and we get one dot. It's not very interesting. What makes a scatter plot is we can see different dimensions and where they sit on this scale. So if we went and got segment and put it on detail, we can see that we get 3 dots because there's 3 segments. If I put that segment on color, we get the same behavior, but now each one is colored differently. Kind of handy. Now that I've got those segments colored, I can go and go ahead and get something else. I can maybe go and get the products and put that on detail. And it takes a while, but now each product is colored. It's a dot, and it's colored using the segment. Okay. And you can change that interaction around a bit. There's no point putting color on product name because that's not going to be an attractive visualization. But you can mess around with these sort of combinations to create different variants. And don't forget, you can still rotate your chart how you want. Okay, you can just go ahead and do that, and you're pretty much creating different customizations. The shape of these circles can be customized too. So let's say you want maybe filled circles instead. You can just go ahead and select that. You could do stars, or here's a really cool trick. You can drag the subcategory and put that on shape, and it will complain, but it will make a different shape for each subcategory. Okay. Kind of a nice chart to look at, very basic, but you can start to get an idea of what you can do with this, okay? So just customize it as much as you want, change it up, go into the tooltips, and add more detail. The last thing I'll show you with this is you can still use dimensions up here in columns and rows. So let's say I want to go and get the category and put it in front of cells. You'll see I'll get 3 scatter plots. And then let's say I want to get the ship mode and put it here in rows. I'll get a grid of 4 by 3, each with a scatter plot inside of it. Okay. So again, as you're learning Tableau, try and mess around with different combinations, see what they do and understand why they do those things. Okay. Super simple. Right. That's the scatter plot. We've got the histogram, the bullet graph, box and Mr. Tree map, and a bunch of other things. Okay, so I'm going to need to ask the stream a favor here. So I am most of the way through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on tomorrow, actually, the same time tomorrow, because I need to step aside because I need to sort a few things out. So I will carry on from where I've left off, exactly where we've left off, right here tomorrow. But if you can't make tomorrow, that's fine because these are all recorded and you'll be able to sort of catch them in the recording. Okay. I need to sort a couple of things out and, you know, kids and all. I thought I'd be free. I thought I'd sort of ironed out a bit of the day, but I do need to help out with something. And yeah, it needs to have my attention. So hopefully so far you've sort of enjoyed what we've covered so far. How long have we been streaming? Let's have a look at this. We've been streaming for nearly 3 hours. I was hoping to do it all in under 3 hours, so we would have overrun by, I think, about half an hour. That's not ideal. But we will finish this remaining sort of content tomorrow. So if you can't make tomorrow, that's totally fine. This is going to be recorded. If you post something in the comments, I'll be able to answer them later on. And then what I'll do is I'll probably stitch them together on Monday or something after the recording's done. And then they can come together and we can kind of stitch them together and put them out. But I really wanted to start today because if you don't put these things down, it doesn't happen. So hopefully you found today valuable, and hopefully you guys can tell me what do you think of it? Did the format work? That's my key question. Is this actually valuable? I appreciate most people will watch this after the live stream. That's obviously, you know, what's going to happen here. But as a live event, like, was this useful? Is it useful to be able to interact? Would a Zoom call be better where you can put your hand up and ask questions? Who knows? Let me know. Okay. So, yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm so sorry I have to step aside. You know, stuff happens and I just have to go sort it out, and that's life. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one, as I always say in my streams. I'll stick around in the comments just as everything sort of dials down to sort of see any remaining comments. But yeah, we'll be back on tomorrow. We'll carry on as ever, and we'll keep pushing. Okay? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.